And finally, non-profit organisation outside the Parole Africa are planning to provide over 1 million meals to underprivileged children across the country as part of the Mandela Day celebrations. The organisation says the meals will be highly nutritious as they try to combat malnutrition in the country. According to the General Household Survey by ActionSA, about 15% or just over 9 million South Africans endured food insecurity last year. Outside the Parole, Executive Director Lauren Erasmus says such initiatives are in line with the teachings of the former president.
So our plan is to raise enough money, to raise enough 67 rands actually, to support 67,000 individuals. So we are looking for 67,000 individuals basically to donate a 67 rand, and that will be a total of 1.4 million meals that we'll distribute, obviously from the 18th of July up until August. But we can only do that when we, reach our target.
Recapping the top story, although the constitution of the Government of National Unity is a done deal, it still faces some serious pushback from some quarters of the ANC alliance. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, rugby in a surprising move. Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus named Salman Murat as the new Springbok captain. And in tennis action, Rafa Nadal makes a winning return at the Swedish Open, defeating Leo Borg. We'll find out more just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. The run into Joburg already being held up at Grasmere. There's major roadworks underway, so between Grasmere Toll and the engine services, that N1 in towards Joburg is already slow. We'll get heavier over the next couple of hours. Truck crash near Liberty Mall this morning. If you're driving down to Durban, coming down into Pietermaritzburg from Town Hill, watch for some traffic slowing there. Apparently 2 lanes are currently blocked off. And Cape Town, the CBD, will be busy again this morning, as we saw yesterday afternoon. This afternoon and tomorrow, ahead of the opening of Parliament event, which takes place on Thursday evening in Cape Town. Those closures are already in place around City Hall, noticeably at Darling Street. A main route through central Cape Town is currently closed off. It was very busy through there yesterday afternoon as drive time traffic got caught up in those closures. We'll see a repetition of that across the day today. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us. Where are we? Wednesday morning. All right. 3 whole days of work to go. How are you doing this morning? I've been watching and sort of looking and reading and sort of listening a little bit and looking at sort of how things have been playing out in Parliament. Not as close to it as I would like. I'm obviously quite far away, strangely. But just watching, because it's quite strange, isn't it? To have a minister standing up who's not from the ANC. Let me put it like that. Yes, we've had 1 or 2 ministers before, and those with long memories go all the way back. But still, it's kind of a change. And I mean, when you have someone like Sibuya Gachube, who is now the Minister of Basic Education, basically saying, and she's asked the President not to sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, the Bela Bill, into law. I mean, it's really sort of interesting to have a minister standing up and saying that. And I think it just changes the atmosphere in Parliament a little bit. And I've been thinking about that because we've got the big event tomorrow, the big State of the Nation address and the President opening Parliament officially after the election, and just sort of talking about, what that's going to be like, because I think things are going to be quite different in Parliament. Quite a few things coming out yesterday. I mean, the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, speaking as the Minister of Agriculture, something I didn't predict before the election, and talking about how important agriculture is. He says that food security is actually a critical national security matter, was the way that he put it. He said that we need to focus on the affordability of food. And look, he's right. I must just tell you, though, that our food prices, no matter who wants to control them, are set really by international markets. And because they're set by international markets, food's become much cheaper over the last 50, 20 years. Pick one, both true. Difficult, of course, at the moment because of such high food price inflation, but it's been higher in other places. Not that that makes it any easier for you, I know that. But the point is that, you can try and interfere in food prices. Very difficult to do. But just very interesting to sort of see a DA person saying that. Dean McPherson, he's now the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. He was saying yesterday, and it seemed to be quite a contentious sort of thing he said yesterday. He said that some political parties, or some parties, I think, are close to the construction mafia. And he said that anyone who tries to stop a construction project will be treated as an enemy of the state. And the moment he said that some political parties are sort of close to the construction mafia, well, MK and the EFF got very, very cross. The EFF, I think Veronica Mente said that this was insulting. He didn't name them. So sort of interesting. But I mean, there've been consistent reporting on the sort of strange links that people involved in the construction mafia have to other groups in our society. So very interesting. But that idea that a construction project, if you stop a construction project, you'll be treated as an enemy of the state, I thought that was interesting. Other issues, of course, going on at the moment in the Western Cape, still just trying to dry out after all of the flooding there. And Tertius Simmers, the Western Cape MEC, saying that 150,000 people have now been affected by the flood. 70 roads are still closed. Just shows you how bad that flooding has been. In Joburg, Dada Morero, he is the member of the Mayoral Committee for Finance. He is from the ANC, and he said, I think he spoke to Daily Maverick, he said that the process to review the 230 Rand surcharge on prepaid customers, this is the network fee everyone's been talking about, he says it can only be tabled at the end of July. In other words, there was this moment when it seemed, he said, this would be reviewed. It looked like at the time that it would probably be scrapped, but maybe now will not be the case. So very interesting. And I think it's led to people being very, very angry. Also, still not clear in my mind, and we spoke to the head of tariffs for City Power, not clear in my mind exactly how it works. Some people do buy electricity for the year. Some people buy it by the day. So how do you work all of those things out? Not entirely sure. There's a story in Business Day this morning about illicit tobacco, and there's a big study done by Ipsos and British American Tobacco. I think BAT paid for it. I presume Ipsos did the work. They say that the government is losing, because the illicit tobacco economy is so big, government is losing 24 billion rand a year. Imagine what 24 billion rand would do to help our soldiers in the DRC who are under attack by M23. How many attack helicopters would that buy them? Put it like that. How many classrooms would it give Saviu Gachube in the basic education department? How many tea rooms for teachers who belong to SATU? There are all sorts of ways you could use that money. 24 billion rand just down the drain. Cheers. Very, very interesting. And then, of course, the other big story this morning, and we'll look at it as we go through the morning together, you and I, former President Jacob Zuma, leader of MK, to go through the ANC disciplinary process. I understand that it's going to be virtual. So the question, of course, is, does he log on? What happens after that? I think no political party in the world really allows you to campaign for another political party. It does sort of happen, but very rare. And it's really all sorts of politics. And then just to mention Salman Murat, the new Springbok captain for the game against Portugal, and the first person, I don't know if these things matter or not, but I think it's important to note, and I think for his community it's very important, but he's the first person of the Islamic faith to lead the Springboks. And it just shows you how institutions in our society have changed over the years. I think this is something people might never even have considered 40 years ago. And now, I almost have to wonder, is it worth mentioning because it seems so natural in a strange way? I think that sort of, is just an interesting sort of thought about it. Anyway, lots of different ways to look at that. Very big moment, I'm sure. And he comes from a family with a long history in the Boland and Parole region of playing rugby. And some of these traditions we never really, focused on enough. From time to time, they sort of surface. We've done interviews about them, discussed them. But still, very interesting, the sort of history of sport in South Africa. Really, the history of the society. That's what the history of sport is, and that's what sport is. Good to have you along this morning. Has anything surprised you so far with the coalition government? Watching people from other parties. Gauteng McKenzie speaking as the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture yesterday. just as an example, Veronica Klabisa from the IFP speaking about local government. Anything surprised you so far with how things are panning out? And then also Jacob Zuma today, he's got that disciplinary. And how do you deal with illicit tobacco? 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. Be with SFM. Nice to have you along. 14 after 6.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
The European outfit want to interrogate African resilience, but Tanzanian champions are highly spirited to rise. German Bundesliga club FC Augsburg battles it out with younger SC from Tanzania. This is the Mpumalanga Premiers International Cup 2024. Do not miss out on the mouth-watering clash between FC Augsburg and Young Africans on Saturday, 20 July at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Tickets are available at CompuTicket. Proudly brought to you by the TS Galaxy Foundation and SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Stephen. Good morning.
Good morning. It's sort of strange and interesting to watch Parliament at the moment. It's just changed so much.
It has. And it is actually countdown, to the opening of Parliament tomorrow. And that's where the opening address will actually mark the formal start of the parliamentary year of the 7th administration. And the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, outlining key priorities and policies, but still lots of conversation on the government of national unity.
Very interesting to watch. What else is coming up today? Jacob Zuma, of course.
Oh, yeah. About 6 months after his suspension from the ANC, and today the former President Jacob Zuma's disciplinary hearing is expected to get underway, and the hearing seeks to have his ANC membership terminated. It will take place virtually, and Zuma was charged with campaigning and then voting for his new party, Mkhonto weSizwe, while still a member of the ANC. We also have reaction from the SABC that's on the latest court challenge the Mkhonto weSizwe party has brought against it, and the party has filed papers in the High Court in Johannesburg over the use of the term Government of National Unity, and the party is seeking a hearing in August and to declare unconstitutional the SABC's use of that term. The George campus of the Nelson Mandela University, in collaboration with the SAPS, they will be launching a campus community safety forum, and this forum aims to address gender-based violence and other crimes affecting students and staff that's on and off campus. In June last year, a 20-year-old female student was stabbed to death in a bedroom by a fellow student. And lastly, we also have more on the city of Johannesburg, who has denied claims of corrupt Metro Police officers renting firearms to criminals, and it has been alleged that some JMPD officers were assisting criminals involved in cash-in-transit heists, and that by renting out department guns in exchange for fees.
Just frightening that these things happen. And Musa, thank you very much indeed. We'll be listening on the radio 18 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane fine, a low of 6, a high of 26. Johannesburg fine, 4 and 22. Vereeniging fine, -1 and 23. Bombela fine, 8 and 26. Polokwane partly cloudy, 4 and 20. Mahikeng fine, 5 and 26. Vryburg fine and windy, 1 and 26. Mangaung fine, a -1 and 22. Kimberley fine and windy, 2 and 25. Uppington fine, 5 and 26. Cape Town partly cloudy, becoming cloudy in the evening, a light to moderate northwesterly wind, 11 and 15. George partly cloudy, light and variable wind in the morning, 8 and 17. Gqeberha partly cloudy, a light and variable wind, 9 and 20. East London partly cloudy, a light northeasterly wind, 8 and 21. eThekwini fine, a light to moderate northerly wind, 11 and 24. Richards Bay morning fog, otherwise fine, a light to moderate northerly wind, 12 and 26. And Pietermaritzburg fine, 5 and 23.
If you love premium documentaries, then we know you love Thursday nights on S3. Broadcaster Alice Levine asks if there's anything such as normal when it comes to sex and sexuality in the 2020s. She meets sexual adventurers up and down Britain, those pushing the boundaries of sex, intimacy and relationships. Tune into Sex Actually, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Chomi, I just hope I get auto assess this year so I can just accept.
You're so lazy. Remember, not everyone gets the auto assessment notice.
I know, but I'm ready. I've got my e-filing password sorted, I've updated my details, and my IRP5 is ready.
Make tax matters priority by updating your personal and banking details and expect your auto assessment notice from 1 to 14 July. If you disagree with your auto assessment, file your return via e-filing. If you don't receive a notice, visit e-filing to submit your tax return from 15 July 2024. Visit sars.gov.za for more information. Your tax matters. SARS, at your service.
Futafreak is more than just football. It's a celebration of passion, community, and the magic of Africa's beautiful game. Futafreak goes beyond the final score. Uncover the heart of the game with special profile segments, taking you on a captivating journey across the continent. Experience the fabric of African football. Futafreak every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on SABC1 and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
21 minutes after 6, good morning. In the US, the former President Donald Trump has received a rapturous welcome at the Republican National Convention and announced the businessman, Senator J.D. Vance, will be his running mate to be vice president. Trump arrived after being shot in the ear in an assassination attempt over the weekend. Some delegates at the conference seemed to be shouting, "Fight, fight, fight," in reference to his comments in the seconds after the shooting. Professor Anthony van Niekerk is a professor of international and diplomacy studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. Professor, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you and good morning.
We're beginning to see what really looks like a massive tide of support for Trump, and I realize it's designed to look that way. But even the leader of the Teamsters Union was speaking in his support yesterday. Is this sort of coalition of forces in the US growing?
Yeah, I think it's undeniable now that after the failed assassination attempt, Trump is really, and his team of marketing people are milking the incident for everything it's worth. And this is counting in his favor. And the media attention has swung completely to Trump. He's appointed running mate, whose name is James Donald Vance, JD, and their agenda, and completely away from Biden and whether he should stand or step down and who would replace him. And in fact, we've forgotten that his party, his political party, still has to nominate him in coming weeks. And so, indeed, I think there's a real political wave of support for Donald Trump, and we are now interested in thinking about what kind of policy agenda this combination of politicians will bring to the table, and maybe to what extent this will influence Africa or South Africa if indeed Donald Trump is the president in the White House in January.
It would seem, in politics, in democratic campaigning politics, momentum matters. And it's really the momentum that we're talking about. But I can't see anything that would sort of change the force. And of course, there's still cause in the Democratic Party to remove Biden, which really shows you that the sort of Trump wave, dare I call it a tsunami, may just become unstoppable.
Yeah, I think the die is cast, Stephen. As far as I'm concerned, we understand now who's going to win the election. Biden is really on the back foot. People are this idea, a serious conversation about who would replace him, never mind who would be his running mate, is off the table for now. And people make jokes about the alternatives. Kamala Harris is the butt of many jokes about her style of communication, the way she speaks, and what she stands for. So I think the Democrats are on the back foot. The Republicans are moving fast ahead, and as I said, people are now interested in what the next administration will bring to the table for the next 4 or 5 years. So the attention is focusing now that we understand that they have the momentum. The support is behind it. The question really is what will happen in the Middle East, what will happen with Ukraine particularly, and in Israel.
Well, I mean, in all of these things, the United States is vital. It's the biggest partner for Israel, as we know. And if it withdrew support for Ukraine, well, Russia probably wins, or maybe, depending on what the rest of Europe does.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awkward situation because this J.D. Vance, this running mate of Trump, is pretty outspoken, or leads a group of people, a group of politicians who cast aspersions, who are very skeptical about the ongoing continued financial and military support for Zelensky. In fact, he's saying that what is the point of giving Zelensky 50, 60 billion US dollars every time he makes a visit to NATO or to America or to Europe? And so there's a good chance that a negotiated outcome to the stalemate is on the cards as soon as Trump and his team enters the White House. And this will count in favor of the Russians, of course. This is what Putin wants from the beginning.
It's not what China wants. China will be watching this very closely.
Yeah, so again, J.D. Vance, the reason I think he was chosen as Trump's running mate is he's almost a clone of, or like a mini-me of Trump, policy-wise, not physically, because this guy is much younger, arguably, more charismatic or dynamic, and is very attractive to younger voters, I would say, and to working and middle class white people in America. So he's very outspoken, and he leads the charge on the real enemy of the U.S. is China, and he's introduced legislation in their parliament from time to time to try to cut down the Chinese influence, particularly in trade with America or with the West. And so I think we can understand the kind of policy agenda that is emerging, that as soon as Ukraine is settled, so to speak, the focus will shift to China. And that's a long-term, that's a big game that needs to be played, because China is not going to back down from any challenge from the White House. It leaves, unfortunately, I think it leaves Israel, Gaza, and the Middle East on tenterhooks, because I don't think that that conflict, which is ongoing, will be resolved easily.
Professor, thank you. Professor Anthony van Niekerk, Professor of International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. 27 minutes now after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Salman Murat, what an interesting choice. Much conversation about this morning.
Absolutely. Apparently, Murat's the man, the boxer in good hands, according to Rassie Erasmus, and he'll become the 66th Springbok captain. That's Salman Murat, and that's how Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus did the pick. The matchday squad against Portugal this weekend will feature 7 uncapped players, including Pepsi Buthelezi, Johan Grobbelaar and Jan-Hendrik Wessels in the starting lineup. Here's Erasmus emphasizing the mix of new and experienced players in the squad.
Hoping to, after the second win against Ireland, which we didn't get, we were really hoping to give the other guys the rest and to give these young guys who's had alignment camps with us a chance. I feel one drop goal shouldn't change your whole mindset and your whole over emotional and not do it. So all of those guys, they deserve to be here.
In the meantime, the Springbok women, they'll face Japan in the opening game of the 2024 edition of the WXV2 on Friday, the 27th of September, all happening in Cape Town, with other 2 tournaments kicking off on the same weekend in Canada and Durban. South Africa will face Japan, Australia and Italy in the tournament, which will be played at DHL Stadium and Athlone Stadium in Cape Town, with Scotland and Wales completing the 6-country roster. On to golf, it has been a transformational 12 months for Sweden's golfing protege Ludvig Aberg. The 24-year-old was part of Europe's impressive Ryder Cup win at Rome, and he has since risen to number 4 in the world rankings. He's now playing in his first Open Championship.
I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be a cool week, a cool tournament. This being my first Open, I've never even been to one, so I'm trying to soak it all in now, Monday through Wednesday, and then come Thursday, be as ready as I can to play good golf.
On to motorsport, Ferrari will continue to supply engines to the Haas Formula One team until the end of the 2028 season. Ferrari have provided power units since Haas made their Grand Prix debut in 2016. Formula One is introducing power unit new rules in 2026, emphasizing hybrid components and running fully on sustainable fuels. And finally, tennis. Rafa Nadal has swept past Leo Borg, son of tennis great Bjorn Borg, to advance to the second round of the Bastard Open as he builds towards the Paris Olympics. It was Nadal's first singles match since the 38-year-old fell in the opening round at Roland Garros. And that's where we leave it for now. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, Serga's asking for more help for local government from the President when he speaks tomorrow. We'll find out more about that in the next half an hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning at 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the disciplinary hearing against former ANC President Jacob Zuma is expected to start today. The hearing, which was initially scheduled to take place earlier this year, was postponed by the ANC to make way for the May 29th elections. Although the constitution of the Government of National Unity is a done deal, it still faces some serious pushback from some quarters of the ANC alliance. Some alliance partners at the Nahaus National Political School, underway in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, have expressed their opposition to the ANC's inclusion of what they call neoliberal parties like the DA into the GNU. And US media is reporting that the United States obtained intelligence about an Iranian plot to assassinate former President Donald Trump in recent weeks. They also report there was no indication that the 20-year-old suspect in the shooting of Trump this past weekend was connected to the plot. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're on your way into Pietermaritzburg, coming in from Howick or Hilton, avoid travelling south of the Peter Brown Drive exit. Come off at Peter Brown, hit the alternative routes, come out the other side of Pietermaritzburg. That is because a truck is overturned and is blocking the N3 to Durban as you approach Pietermaritzburg just by Liberty Mall. So once you get past Peter Brown, options become pretty limited to sort of backlog of traffic back towards that Chatterton exit, and that's all going to be heavily clogged up as well. So either off at Hilton or Peter Brown, Old Road into Pietermaritzburg this morning to avoid a literal standstill of trucks and vehicles on the N3 down towards Liberty Mall and that crash scene. Joburg's N3 North already backing up from the Elands interchange through towards Germiston. Looks like being a busy run through there. And Cape Town, just a note about the CBD, road closures are already in place around City Hall. Preparation for tomorrow's opening of Parliament and some rehearsal preparations as well a little bit later this evening. So all sorts of closures of routes like Corporation Street and Darling Street right in the Cape Town CBD. That will cause some localised congestion getting into town this morning, and it will cause some major disruption again this afternoon and tomorrow. We saw some very heavy traffic backlogging through yesterday's drive time, and that'll repeat over the next couple of afternoons around central Cape Town. So just give yourself extra time to get through those closures. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intalengla Chele, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Stephen. I'm well, thanks, and I hope you're good.
Oh, good. How are the markets?
Rotation continues to be the name of the game in the U.S. We saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average reaching new heights yesterday as the stock market continued to rise. This was driven by hopes of upcoming interest rate cuts, which boosted companies beyond just the tech sector. Sentiment in the U.S. broadly positive, being led, of course, by the Dow Jones. Moving over to Asia now, the mood finally taking a turn with those stocks trading mostly in the green after a negative start to the week. Traders in Asia quite optimistic about the outlook for interest rates after US Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that the 3 inflation readings over the second quarter showed that pressures were easing. Back at home, markets still downbeat. That rate cut euphoria doesn't seem to be filtering through. I guess local traders are eyeing what a Trump victory could mean for emerging markets, particularly China. With that, we saw the all-share closing 1.2% in the red yesterday. In the currency scene, the rand making gains as the dollar falters. It's currently trading at 18.06 to the greenback.
And Asia still a headache for Richmond.
Stephen, this comes as Richmond reported growth in all its markets except Asia Pacific. The luxury brands group, chaired by Johan Rupert, has been struggling to turn a profit in that region, particularly in China. Sales in Greater China plunged 27% during its first quarter. To be fair, we've seen a slump in the luxury market due to slow sales in the world's second biggest economy. Just yesterday, we spoke about Burberry and the downbeat update it released. Now, analysts had initially expected a boom in spending post the relaxation of lockdown restrictions a few years ago, but that has not materialized. It seems like analysts had overestimated that recovery. Even on the growth front, China's latest GDP print, we saw a slowdown in growth for the second quarter. Now, when looking at the group's earnings in detail, sales increased a tepid 1% on constant currency basis. This, however, was in line with analyst forecast and compares to double-digit gains a year ago. Despite the tepid growth, the troubles in China, markets welcomed the numbers with the share closing almost 1% higher in yesterday's trade.
And then the IMF is keeping our growth forecast unchanged.
That's right, Stephen. In its July World Economic Outlook update, the IMF kept its economic forecast for South Africa the same, expecting growth of 0.9% this year and 1.2% next year. This comes despite an improvement in energy supply and the post-election calm. The fund has not commented on the outcome of the local general election, but officials did reiterate in early June that South Africa's economy continued to face challenges, and it was a priority to remove bottlenecks to growth through an ambitious structural reform program. The group further said that the government must put public debt on a sustained downward path through fiscal consolidation. Now, when looking at sub-Saharan Africa, the IMF revised its outlook slightly down for this year to 3.7% on weaker growth in Nigeria. On the global front, the IMF maintained its forecast of growth of 3.2% in 2024, but it has been warning of inflationary and trade risks.
Ntao Lengletshela, thanks very much indeed. Back, of course, in an hour's time. More business news through the day here on SFM.
There's sponsoring a news feature. Then there's helping your clients make the news. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking to see how far they can take your business.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Rust Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning. The situation in Kenya seems to be getting very, very difficult again. Police firing tear gas, more crowds demanding William Ruto resign.
Stephen, we saw also this week William Ruto accusing the Ford Foundation of funding this protest, but will not provide any evidence. And the Ford Foundation denied this claims that it does not fund protests and maintains what others they call a non-partisan policy. But yesterday, there was this confrontation with the human rights activists also in the streets. They are now demanding William Ruto to resign, Stephen. But there were very few of them. There might be 200 in the Nairobi city. But also the journalists are being injured in this crossfire between the police and the activists. Even if Stephen he has sacked or fired his cabinet members, there is still the vacuum in terms of governance. The National Commission of the Police has resigned. So there is a lot of vacuum that is in Nairobi that is taking place. And obviously, the East Africa community and the African Union, they are watching it closely.
And then in Mali, 3 years after he died in Paris, the former Burundian president will now be repatriated from Mali.
And today it will be the private ceremony of the former president of Burundi, Pierre Buyoya. Stephen, he passed away in Paris in 2020 after contracting COVID-19. Now, he was buried in Mali, in Bamako, Stephen, at the age of 71. He has been a special envoy of the AU on the Sahel region, including Mali. Now, yesterday his body was brought back from Mali to be reburied in Burundi today in that private ceremony. We know him very well, Stephen. He was involved during the time of the late President also Pierre Nkurunziza when they had some tussle in 2015.
And then a Nigerian court saying the former central bank governor cannot leave the country.
There's a good win Emefiele Stephen could not travel because he's still facing the charges, serious economic offences that has been brought by the Financial Crimes Commission. Now they say it's a flight risk. Despite that, he might say that he has to undergo a medical treatment, but the government of Nigeria and the courts yesterday denying him to travel or to go outside to can access the medical treatment. So the former governor is now still in Abuja to undergo the medical treatment.
And then in Côte d'Ivoire, in Yamoussoukro, the first doses of a malaria vaccine.
Stephen, WHO says that it has reached its target of 75% efficacy at preventing the disease of malaria. They say that they hope R21 or the Matrix M will pave the way for eradicating this disease. Now, this is a new jab that has come, the new malaria vaccine that is in Ivory Coast. Malaria, it has been a challenge in West Africa, Central Africa, Stephen, but now Ivory Coast becomes the first African country in the West African region to undergo this trial of the R21 or the Matrix M that will deal with the malaria diseases in Côte d'Ivoire.
And then in our archives, I love this, Sipho. This is, this is gold. The 17th of July, 1950. What happened?
Stephen, the SABC introduced its first national news service 74 years ago. Despite SABC can be traced back to 1923, and also you look at 1927. But on this day, the first radio national news bulletin in English and Afrikaans went on, Stephen. Remember, it was still known as the Springbok radio during that time. The SABC grew from the 60s, 70s until today. We still find it being the number one leading radio station in terms of news coverage, being independent and impartial on that level, Stephen. Asante sana, as we are still leading the conversation, SFM, observing the International Nelson Mandela Month.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, thanks very much indeed. And Musa, happy birthday, 19 minutes to 7.
There's listening to the news. Then there's making the news. Grow your business into the next big thing with Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. When you choose Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking, you get access to our transactional banking solutions. Accessing our transactional banking solutions means you'll get a dedicated manager from the country's best relationship bank. When you have a dedicated relationship manager, their business is to understand your business and its financial needs. By understanding all your needs, they can connect you with the right sector and product experts across 15 key African markets. You see, there's transactional banking, then there's transactional banking with us. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Michael on the line from eThekwini. Michael, hi, good morning. The coalition government, or the GNU, or whatever you want to call it. How do you feel about it, Michael?
No, I wanted to respond to your comment earlier on. You were saying it's like a new thing for you to see DA ministers and then seeing PA ministers in the form of Gauteng Mackenzie. But for me, I would say at least people like DNA, then at least they've been in Parliament, they've been in Spotlight. We know what they represent, at least.
Yes.
People like Solly Malatsi, they've been on the media responding to a lot of questions. At least we know their character and their personality. And people like Kwarube, they've been in Parliament. At least they are now knowing the business of government. I think the people that we don't know are these new ministers that you haven't seen them interacting with the public, interacting with the media spaces, answering on behalf of the government. We haven't seen them. So those are the people that we still expect to see how are they going to conduct themselves, what will be their posture in government. But the rest of the Solimalasa, I think Solimalasa is the one well-spoken person. I think we expect a lot even when to take that into government, that orderly articulating things. I think there will be a lot of contribution. I think the means of genuine is very good so that our government is not one-sided.
Yeah.
If it's one-sided, you only know what is coming out before they even say it. Now, we are starting to see new things. But now I've got a query whereby, like you said, Kwaru was telling President not to sign the amendment bill in education, to say it's not going to be like now we are in government but opposing government.
No, well, this is Michael. This is where it gets really interesting. I mean, really interesting in these moments. Let's see what happens. 16 minutes to 7.
Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
Do you have fresh musical talent lighting up your timeline or making waves in your community?
Well, we want to see them shine, so send their details to our WhatsApp line on 063-408-8863 and they could perform live on Expresso.
Discover the hottest new artists and be part of the excitement.
Catch Expresso weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3 and be part of the magic.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
6:45 the time. Good morning. The SA Local Government Association, representing councils, calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to focus on rebuilding local government in his big speech tomorrow night. And Ramaphosa, of course, speaking as the leader of a coalition government, really, I suppose, for the first time after the elections. Councillor Beka Stofile is the president of the South African Local Government Association. Councillor Stofile, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to your viewers.
You say you want the president to focus on local government. He now leads a coalition government. Do you think that makes it easier to fix local government, that he's leading a coalition now?
It's easy to fix anything, Stephen, if there is a commitment to collaborate and pull together different streams to focus to something. For instance, you do have an instrument that has been put since 1994 in terms of assisting, building capacity to municipalities, intervene when there is a need to intervene. All these things, Stephen, can only succeed if there is one thing and one thing only: learning to work collaboratively on dealing with the challenges of local government, because local government challenges are both systematic challenges and challenges that requires a particular focus, which we have not focused over the years to it.
The new Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister, the IFP leader, Willem Klabisa, he said this week he believes councils that are dysfunctional should be dissolved. There should be fresh elections. Do you agree with him?
Look, the difficulty with that statement, if you take it from the face value, is just to issue a statement without looking into context. For instance, I'm told that we must learn from the literature, developments that have developed over time. There are municipalities in the country that have been subjected to dissolution by previous administration, including the sixth administration, have dissolved municipality. For instance, take Tshwane case, dissolution and that. And what we have been saying as SALGA over years is that the dissolution, it must not be informed by what we perceive. We must go a little bit deeper into what are the reasons for the municipality not to perform the duties that they're supposed to perform. And it has been proven. If you look into Tshwane case, for instance, because we have been arguing that dissolution, it doesn't really resolve the problems. What it resolves the problems is to understand what are the key fundamental issues that we need to deal with. And then you deal with those issues, because if you don't deal with those issues, you can dissolve, call a new elections, and the same people that you dissolve, they emerged. So the issue to me is that, do we understand what are the problems? I think the Cocta 6th administration have put together a research And it identifies 7 key factors of dysfunctional municipality. And amongst those is the financial viability and many other issues. And this requires a cooperative way of resolving those issues.
Okay, I mean, I understand that. There's a strange political situation at the moment. Well, maybe it's not strange, but it seems odd to me that we have the ANC working with the IFP and the DA and other parties in national government and in KwaZulu-Natal. In the ANC in Gauteng, the ANC there is working with the EFF and 2 Joburg metros. And you think this situation is sustainable over the longer term?
Look, Stephen, like we said even some few years ago in various State of the Nation address, whatever, seemingly in South Africa, like what is happening in the globe, it will then ultimately go to a coalition. The question is, are we prepared? I know South Africa is coining differently. They are saying national government of national unity, but it's a coalition. The question is, are we propelled and ready to enter into that? And part to that, what it must make you to be a successful coalition, you must have a broad principles in which you have commonality and agreement. Now, if you are informed by different political interests, the success of any coalition are very limited. And then to me, it depends. It's still a very new baby in South Africa and the engagement at that level. To me, we must avoid a situation where coalition in South Africa using local government reaches a stage where there is an instability and thereby a serious effect on service delivery to communities.
Councillor Becca Stofile, thank you. President of the South African Local Governments Association. We'll be watching that speech tomorrow, 10 minutes to 7.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The run through Midrand getting heavy. It's a breakdown now between Olifantsfontein and New Road, and that's pushed Wednesday morning traffic right back already to Old Joburg Road and looking particularly heavy. There's also a breakdown on the N3 North at Helden, so out of Germiston and Alberton, the N3 up past Cement Factory on your way to Bedford is heavy, and a crash scene before Grayston Drive on the Mike 1 North, so I got some queues building up back through Corlett Drive. N3 towards Durban, entering Pietermaritzburg is closed. It's a truck that's overturned near Liberty Mall. Motorists and truckers just being stacked up at that scene. If you're coming in from Howick and Hilton, off-ramp at Hilton or off-ramp at Peter Brown, they're your sort of 2 major exits to get you off the highway before you get into that backlog of traffic, which extends back beyond the Chatterton Road sort of alternative exit as well. So Peter Brown, sort of the last exit point before you hit the real trouble there. That's likely to be an issue for some time this morning. Cape Town, the highways are pretty busy. We saw it yesterday, seeing it again this morning. N1 from Plattekloof all the way to Kuiper. Give a change. M5 from Ottery right through to Maitland is looking really busy, and there's even some early morning pressure up the M3. Queues already from Constantia through towards Paradise Road in the Bishop's Court area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
8 minutes to 7, the time. You know the number. With the new Basic Education Minister, the DA's Sibuyo Gachube, says she's asking the President to not sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, the Bella Bill, into law. She says she doesn't want the law to be tied up in court. Her party strongly opposed the bill. At the same time, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, which of course has supported the ANC for many years, has said the minister must not try to change things in the department without consultation. Namusa Qembi is the spokesperson for SAT2. Namusa, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
Do you agree with the minister the Bella Bill should not be signed into law?
We believe the Bella Bill went through all the rightful processes, and it was passed by both the NCOP and in Parliament. So we see no reason for it not to be passed, because I think it took over 2 years. The consultation took over 2 years, I think every province was consulted. There were consultations with all stakeholders. There were public participation processes. We believe all the processes were undertaken to ensure that most South Africans gave input to the bill. So what came out of the bill, we believe, was as a result what of the inputs from all stakeholders and citizens of South Africa.
So, I mean, if the minister signs it, if the president signs it after the minister asked him not to, I mean, do you think that she could stay the minister? I mean, doesn't this get to the heart of things?
We think it would be improper because the last person who was supposed to sign was the president. So we believe it would be improper for anyone to come after all the processes have been completed to say it shouldn't be signed, to tell the president that it shouldn't be signed.
It's very interesting. You know, the minister comes from the DA, and the DA has been very critical of you, Satu, in the past. You've been very critical of the DA. I mean, look, it's a difficult history. Do you think the president was wrong to give this ministry to the DA?
We have no powers to say the president was right or wrong, but as SATU, we felt that the DA was not the best to take that position, judging by how they looked at education. The DA was politicizing education. Whenever they look at education, they would look at us, SATU, and all the problems in education, they would say they are there because of SATU being there. Even in their manifesto, in all the political parties, it is only the DA in their manifesto that mentioned SATU by its name, that they were going to deal with us. So we felt that their coming to the education space was more political than really to bring redress into the system.
Look, I mean, I accept what you say. Of course, education is always political, but I accept what you say. Is there a way that you and Siviwe Gwagube are going to be able to work together, or is it going to be a very tough 5 years in education?
I cannot speculate, but we are meeting. The minister will be meeting with political parties next, with trade unions, with the 5 trade unions in the education space next week. We will be part of that. We are going to meet with her, and then we'll see from there, you know, how what she says and what we bring in. But if she treats unions as critical stakeholders in education and gives them the respect that they deserve, we are going to work with her. But if she comes with the DA mentality that she's out to deal with us, then it will be difficult to work with such a person. We hope she comes in as a minister and not wearing the hat of the DA.
Nomusa Gumbi, thank you. Spokesperson for the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Really appreciate the time. 4 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, good to hear from you this morning. In a way, I think that conversation sort of gets to some of the points of difference of the coalition. People still learning to work together, though, in many ways. Bonakele in Cape Town, good morning. The big event this morning, former President Jacob Zuma's disciplinary hearing.
Absolutely. A very good morning, Steve. You know, when something is said to be long overdue, they're talking about this hearing of former President Jacob Zuma. There's nothing else I, for one, expecting to hear that this former president has been expelled from the ANC. That's one and only thing that will make me excited and be very happy, especially a day before our legend, Tatu Madiba, is born tomorrow. So for them, it's going to be a history that Jacob Zuma, former president, has been expelled by the ANC just before the birthday of Tatu Madiba tomorrow. And I hope going forward, you won't hear him going around to say he's still a member of the ANC, whereas we know for a fact that he's leading the MK party. That's end of it. It's end of the road for him. A good night. Thank you very much. Have a nice one.
All right, Bonakele in Cape Town. Thank you. Very interesting. Irfan in Cape Town. Hi. The Education Minister. Yeah, I'm well, Irfan. Go for it.
Good, thank you. Stephen, I just want to comment on the Education Minister. I'm very much for it. And regarding the lady from SATU, there was very much so much people more opposing it and petitioning it. What about all those people voices? They're not carrying them. So I'm very much for it, and I hope it goes through.
Okay, hold on. In other words, that the Bela Bill does not become law, is what you mean?
Yes, because there was a lot of people against it.
Yes, no, I mean, that's true. Are you surprised to see that the DA got education? It's a big, big portfolio.
Very much so, but let's hope it works in people's favor. And things get to change.
All right, Irfan in Cape Town. Thanks. Very interesting way of looking at it. And there are lots of different ways of looking at all of this, of course. Coming up in the next little while, quite a busy sort of half hour, we find out a bit more about Parole. I mean, it's very interesting. We've all been talking about Chifuyo Matodzi, the former chair of VBS Bank. He starts a jail term this week. But Philip Truter, the former chief financial officer, already being released on parole. We'll find out more about that. Also, Boniface Banks, he's a prisoner, released a video. Yes, I did just say that. A prisoner releasing a video. Put it on social media about life behind bars. Said it was very comfortable. The Correctional Services Ministry responding to that. Barbara Creasy, the Transport Minister, hearing from her about potholes, about dealing with transport issues, the private sector, and then also more on the Zuma disciplinary as well today. Good morning. Nice to have you along with us this Wednesday morning. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 7 o'clock.
In our top story, Zuma's disciplinary hearing expected to get underway, and US had intel on Iranian plot to kill Donald Trump. Good morning. The disciplinary hearing against former ANC President Jacob Zuma is expected to start today. The hearing, which was initially scheduled to take place earlier this year, was postponed by the ANC to make way for the May 29th elections. Zuma has been accused of violating Rule 25 of the ANC Constitution. Sibahle Mota reports.
The disciplinary hearing against former President Jacob Zuma, which seeks to have his ANC membership terminated, will take place virtually. The hearing comes after his announcement in December that he would no longer campaign for the ANC in the 2024 elections, but endorse newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party. This is a move that saw him get suspended by the ANC in January. But Zuma, who now leads the MK party, says that he will always remain a member of the ANC.
Although the constitution of the Government of National Unity is a done deal, it still faces some serious pushback from some quarters of the ANC alliance. Some alliance partners at Nahau's National Political School underway in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, have expressed their opposition to the ANC's inclusion of what they call neoliberal parties like the DA into the GNU. The SACP General Secretary Solly Mapehila told Nahau-affiliated health workers they are not happy at the current mode of the GNU that excludes left-wing parties like the EFF and, by extension, the MK party. He says this was done by a faction in the ANC that is sympathetic to business.
In the ANC, there's always been a neoliberal faction, which is the dominant faction, because its orientation will always go towards the DA. The first day I went to meet Comrade Floyd is the day after I buried my brother. I went to the ANC begging people to focus on the possible revolutionary path. It will be better to be irritated by the EFF than to be irritated by the neoliberal forces who want to take control of the revolution. But this neoliberal faction was too impatient. They did not want to engage with them. They did not even want to offer them something serious. And yet they went on to offer these reactionary forces, colonial forces, so much power.
SARS says it has become aware of scammers pretending to represent the revenue collector with the aim of defrauding taxpayers. The tax revenue collector says it saved 100 billion rand last year alone through its improved risk and fraud detection capabilities. SARS Commissioner Edward Kisveta warned taxpayers against opening any email links and WhatsApp messages purporting to represent SARS.
Do not open or respond to emails from a source that you do not recognize. Beware of emails that ask for personal, tax, banking, and e-filing logon details. We would never ask those credentials, your passwords, your PINs, your credit card information through these links. SARS will also never request your personal banking details in any communication that you receive via post, email or SMS. However, for the purpose of telephonic engagement and authentication purposes, SARS will take due diligent effort to verify your personal details.
The Nelson Mandela Children's Fund has urged South Africans to uphold Madiba's legacy by uniting to protect children from the prevalent abuse in the country. In the build-up to Mandela Day this week, the organisation held a fun walk for vulnerable children. The fund CEO, Dr. Linda Ngubenkomo.
The protection of children is really part of our day-to-day work. So our vision as the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund is to change the way society treats its children and its youth. And when it comes to the safety and protection of children, if we were to grade ourselves as a country that's 30 years into democracy, how well we've done where child safety is concerned, we're doing really, really poorly. And it needs more than just a day for us to be talking about child protection. It needs us to be always constantly aware as people who look after children.
Further afield, and finally, US media is reporting that the United States obtained intelligence about an Iranian plot to assassinate former President Donald Trump in recent weeks. They also report there was no indication that the 20-year-old suspect in the shooting of Trump this past weekend was connected to the plot. The Secret Service and the Trump campaign were made aware of the Iranian plot ahead of Saturday's campaign rally. Showan Bryce-Peace reports.
A Secret Service spokesperson told CNN that the agency recently added protective resources and capabilities to the former president's security detail ahead of Saturday's rally, resources that failed to stop the deceased suspect from firing on Trump's rally, his gunfire killing one person and critically injuring two other attendees while grazing Trump's ear. President Joe Biden has ordered an independent review of the Secret Service's security posture during that event in the hopes of preventing similar instances in the future. It's unclear, given the intel, how the security apparatus on Saturday aligned with the intelligence received. Trump, who officially became the Republican nominee Monday, appeared on the convention floor surrounded by a legion of protectors, more so than usual.
Recapping the top story, the disciplinary hearing against former ANC President Jacob Zuma is expected to start today. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. Salman Murat leads a new-look Springbok team against Portugal in Bloemfontein. And in golf, 8 South Africans to compete in the Open Championship at Royal Troon. All this and more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's all happening down at KZN this morning. A big truck crash at Liberty Mall on your way to Durban. The highway is closed. Recovery teams on scene trying to get that truck pulled to a side to release some of that backlog, but it is heavy. All lanes closed. Big backlogs coming in from the bottom of Town Hill as you approach that closure. Also a truck fire on the M7. This is leaving Pinetown on your way towards the Bluff, just around Hunt Stedman. So the M7 heading down out of Pinetown towards North Dean is already queuing up into that particular scene. Joburg, 2 queues on the mic 1, the usual backlog, Boysons through Parktown, and then you've got the second queue, which is a crash at Grayston Drive on the mic 1 North. That's pushing traffic back to Glenhove Road and looking pretty heavily congested. And Cape Town warning about this. The highways are really busy again this morning. The M5, for example, queues from Ottery, Southfield, all the way through to the Kuiper interchange. Plenty of traffic up the M3 as well, with queues from Constantia right through to the top of Wynberg Hill and in towards Paradise Road Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Curtis. Well, more from the Transport Minister, Barbara Creasy. In a few moments, we'll hear from Dr. Ralph Mateka on the situation around former President Jacob Zuma's disciplinary hearing in the ANC and correctional services as well. Singabaka Ngomalo, the questions around Philip Truter's parole, how it works, what life in prison is really like, all of that to come. Nice to have you along with us. You know the number, 086 000 2032. 8 after 7, good morning.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money, and then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gargi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
10 after 7, good morning. Well, confirmation this week that while the former chair of VBS Bank, Chifuwa Matodzi, is starting his 15-year jail term, the former chief financial officer of the bank, Philip Truter, has already been released on parole. He served 3 years and 6 months behind bars. At the same time this week, a video emerging of a prisoner telling the camera that he was living a very comfortable life in prison, that he had a cell phone and social media and food and all sorts of other amenities. The spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services is Singabako Ngomalo. Singabako, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Stephen, and thank you for having us.
How did Philip Truter qualify for parole so quickly?
You will remember that Mr. Truter got a 10-year sentence, and in that 3 years was suspended for a period of 5 years. Technically, he had to serve a 7-year sentence. And when you look at 7 years, you then have to calculate the minimum required time before an inmate could be considered for parole placement. And he would have reached the minimum term by the 6th of April 2024. And indeed, he was considered by the parole board, and they did, it was deemed that he is fit to be placed out on parole. And on the 12th, he was then placed on parole. As I'm talking to you, Mr. Truter is a parolee.
Okay, as I understand it, I mean, as a rule of thumb, roughly after you've served a third of your sentence, sometimes it seems only a sixth of your sentence, you can qualify to apply for parole.
No, Section 73 is clear. It says every inmate after serving the minimum required time is eligible to be considered. And being eligible to be considered doesn't mean that automatically you are granted. You still have to satisfy all the requirements set in our system, meaning the parole board have to make it a point that you did everything as per your correctional sentence plans, and also that the assessment reports by our specialists do concur. And when they look at all of those factors, they will then make a decision, because parole boards are independent structures.
Part of this is that what's supposed to happen in these situations is that the victims are also heard. In this case, were the victims heard, the people who lost money in VBS?
I think I did clarify this with another professor. What's happening here, you have the perpetrator being Mr. Truter, and the complainant being VBS, an institution. It therefore says that as correctional services, we had to then limit ourselves between the parties which are listed on the papers. So, but some people were saying, but what about those people individually? Unfortunately, what was before us was an institution, not the individuals.
Okay. If a court hands down a sentence, and I'm going specifically here to, say, a plea deal, right, which I think it happened in the case of Truth, happened in the case of Chifuyo Matodzi. If someone gets a sentence, once the sentence is handed down, the person's in your custody, is what happens after that entirely up to you? In other words, it's your decision through the parole board and the process you've explained. It doesn't matter, I mean, the sentence obviously matters, but it's entirely up to you whether they are released on parole or not, so long as they've served that minimum part of the sentence.
Perhaps let's go back a bit. There are different players within the criminal justice system, and each player there has a specific mandate to serve. Correctional services, what we receive is a warrant of detention, which specifies that here you have Stephen, who's been sentenced to 7 years. And this is the offense that he committed, and it will also list other players involved, meaning the victims. And then it will end there. So as correctional services, you are bound to limit yourself to that, because if you then take it to areas which are covered by the other players, that may test and compromise the entire process. So as a department, we only limit ourselves in terms of what the mandates ask us to do.
Okay. The other issue, the video of this prisoner, Boniface Banks, describing life as comfortable. Obviously, he had access to cell phones. We know that that's illegal, and yet it seems impossible to stop. Is life in our prisons comfortable, Singabako?
What Boniface Banks did is totally uncalled for, and we're very appalled by it as a department. In actual fact, it's really making a mockery of our correctional system. Hence, we conducted a searching exercise. We managed to find a cell phone. We even picked up that he had just about 5,000 followers, meaning there are people in a way who find these videos to be exciting, of which, as a department, we're pictured by that. It's not something that we want people to really we want to encourage people, to follow such things. But as a department, it's also a reflection to say how stringent are our security operations in making it impossible for inmates to access mobile phones. But even if once an inmate has a mobile phone, are there other measures that we can take so that we are able to disable those mobile phones from operating? And we're looking at technology, because we've been through this journey for a while now, and at least now there are options in terms of technology where we can block the signal without having to affect other radios or emergency services in the vicinity.
Singabaka Ngomalo, thanks very much indeed. Spokesperson in the Department of Correctional Services. 16 after 7.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
The new Transport Minister, the ANC's Barbara Creecy, promising this week to make progress in dealing with the problems at our railways and our ports and to make sure our economy can move. One of the ministers delivering her budget speech in Parliament this week. Minister Barbara Creecy, good morning, and thanks for agreeing to speak to us in your new role.
Thank you for inviting me, Stephen, and greetings to all your listeners.
You spoke in your budget speech of making sure that the ports and the railways work. How do you intend to do that?
Well, Stephen, I'm fortunate because I'm able to build on the significant work that was done by my predecessor and also by the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which was set up late last year to manage the difficulties in our logistics sector. This committee is made up of both government, private sector, and also the trade union movement. And really what it's looking at is what is causing the blockages, how do we unblock those problems, what kind of regulatory changes are required, and so on. And I think that while we are nowhere near the levels of tonnage that we were at in 2018, they have managed to turn the corner with this particular system.
I mean, from what I can see, you seem to be, preparing, inviting more involvement from the private sector, a unit in your department to manage that. What kind of role should the private sector be playing in our railway network, for example? I mean, where's the line for you?
Well, I think that we are clear that the infrastructure would belong to government, but what we're looking at is introducing new operators. So I suppose you could look at it that what is on the ground belongs to us, and what is above the ground could involve public and private participation. We have a whole range of branch lines in Transnet that are not operating efficiently. Many of these branch lines would be specific to specific industries, so that would offer opportunities for participation. There are already private container ports in our country, so I think we would be looking at bringing in more participation in the ports. And of course, there could be involvement in infrastructure if it was on a build, operate and transfer basis.
You also mentioned this week that councils are not spending the money they're supposed to spend on roads. In other words, roads can have potholes. The money's being returned to the National Treasury because it hasn't been spent. And Minister, when I read that, I actually wanted to bang my head on the table. I can't imagine how frustrated you must be that happens.
Well, I think it's less about you and me, Stephen, and it's more about people who just have to navigate these terrible roads every day. And we have to do something about it. There was a good suggestion in the budget speech that we need to set up a unit that will follow the money. It's something I did long ago when I was in the Gauteng Finance Department to assist municipalities to spend their conditional grants. And it definitely did help. So one is going to have to look at this again. It's not just municipalities, by the way, it's also provinces. So, public procurement is a complex issue. If these subnational government needs help, then obviously that's something we've got to do.
Do you believe it's going to change? I have this horrible feeling that so many of us have just become so used to so many potholes in so many places that actually, and I mean, it's a sort of indictment in many ways, but I mean, people have just become so used to it. You get a sense that actually this is never going to get better.
Well, I think that I don't want to pretend that I can bring about a miracle, but I think that we can do better, much better than we're doing at the moment.
Okay. Minister, thank you for your time. Barbara Creasy is the Minister of Transport. Do appreciate it. 20 minutes now after 7 with SFM.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, the ANC starting its disciplinary hearing into the conduct of former President and MK leader Jacob Zuma today. Zuma's consistently said he's still a member of the ANC. He's also been leading MK's election campaign. Zuma was formally suspended by the ANC before the election. Dr. Rolf Matega is a political analyst. He joins us now. Dr. Matega, good morning. Nice to chat again.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to SFM.
On the law, this is pretty simple. Zuma campaigned for another party. I would presume no party really would allow that. Therefore, he must be expelled. But that's not what this is about, is it? It's really about the politics.
I mean, it is very bizarre. It's very strange, Stephen, because even now, when you hear Mr. Zuma speaking, he's speaking also through the spokesperson of the new party that he actually formed and the one he's accused of actually forming. A lot has happened since the troubles within the ANC, since Mr. Zuma made it very clear that he wanted to identify with another party other than the ANC. His political intentions were very clear. I do not know what the ANC will gain out of this, or is the ANC somewhere, somehow trying to extend an olive branch? I do not understand, because Mr. Zuma looked like someone who could not care less about what happened within the ANC, given how much he advanced politically with the MK party.
Is Zuma's strategy about sort of wanting to be expelled by Cyril Ramaphosa? It makes the story, I mean, this will be a big story today. It could take a little while. Each day it will be a story, and it will give Zuma the sort of, this is just my speculation, I suppose, that it gives the impression that he's been expelled by Ramaphosa. He wants to personalize it.
And remember, Stephen, he has always made a point that he wants to fix the ANC from outside. So He sees the platform of the MK as a way to help the ANC that he sees as being besieged under President Ramaphosa's leadership. And I mean, how feasible is that? What will be the solution here? I mean, after this disciplinary process, what actually can be achieved that works for the ANC and for Mr. Zuma? As for the ANC, it is all about now, the party should focus on looking at the losses, what they have experienced, how they've actually suffered electorally. Also, I would say to a greater extent, because of the MK as well, how it dented the NC's electoral base. So there's no recovery from that, and I do not see any political solution that will come out of this. Mr. Zuma is making the demands to the ANC that has to do with Mr. Ramaphosa's leadership, President Ramaphosa's leadership. The ANC is another party. Mr. Zuma runs another party. He does not consult with the ANC, what he does within the MK. It is a very strange politics, and I don't know whether is it just for show. I don't see anything substantive that come out of this that will help the ANC.
We talk about the ANC trying to sort of renew itself, and Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, said this week he thought there should be a sort of, I think it was a 5-day meeting of the National Executive Committee to discuss what went wrong. Isn't there a big risk to that 5-day meeting becomes a sort of blame game?
Yeah, I mean, what went wrong, the information is out there. It's all been there. There's no need for conspiracies and everything. The ANC, they know exactly what happened. The first and foremost, it's the fallout with the voters. That is the most important thing. Then try to understand the pattern, try to understand other trigger points. But the fallout with the voters, it is actually at the core of what the party experienced. So I think accepting what has happened and trying to engage in a kind of a deeper inquiry on a simple thing such as this, it looks like just evading the actual issue here.
There's a lot going on in Parliament at the moment, and we're seeing ministers from parties who previously haven't been in government speaking. We're also going to see the President speaking tomorrow and delivering his sort of opening of Parliament address. It seems that, in a way, this is the moment when you realise how much has actually changed as a result of this election. Parliament is very different. The EFF is a little bit smaller. MK, of course, is going to be a big presence. How different is Parliament going to be now?
I mean, it's going to be very interesting, Stephen. I mean, even the shape of the opposition, I don't know how the opposition is going to look like. I mean, the party that used to be the main opposition, as you correctly stated, they are now in government, and the EFF and the MK are now emerging as their opposition. I don't know also what type of opposition they're going to do. Are we going to see some disruptions? Are they going to play by the rules? I'm sitting down and even asking myself how South Africa's body politics will shape in Parliament, Stephen, because when I'm looking at the parties we are talking about that are going to be opposition, I ask myself, do they believe in opposition politics? What's going to happen? Because does the EFF believe in the opposition politics in a way that one would say it can form a liberal opposition party? Opposition parties are generally liberal. The framework is a liberal democratic framework. It is very strange to imagine these two parties now going to form the nexus of the opposition. You look at the cabinet as well, Stephen. After this, the GNU, the first meeting, things have changed quite dramatically, and I think even the players themselves are still trying to figure out what just happened.
Dr. Ralph Mateja, thanks very much indeed, political analyst. Interesting point. The players themselves still trying to figure out what just happened. All right, a lot more to come. Your reaction to all of that. You heard Dr. Mateja there, the situation in the government. You heard, of course, the Transport Minister as well, talking about potholes. And then before that, the situation in correctional services. Prisoners, it seems, are able to kind of do what they like. Of course, the department denies that. You are with SAFM, coming up to 27 minutes after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Salman Murat leading a New Looks team.
Yes, great to see diversity in the team, sport unifying us all. Springbok coach Rugby Erasmus has selected a vastly different team for the one-off match against Portugal in Bloemfontein this Saturday. The team will be captained by Salman Murat, marking the first meeting between the Springboks and Portugal. The starting lineup includes newcomers Pepsi Buthelezi, Johan Grobelaar and Jan-Hendrik Wessels. The matchday squad features a mix of young talent and experienced players with Makazole Mapimpi, Archie Snyman, Lucanio Am and Kobus Reinach amongst the most capped. Erasmus aims to build squad depth and bounce back from the recent series draw against Ireland. Now more rugby, the junior Springboks have called up outside back Wandile Mhlaba as replacement for Likona Finka, who sustained a hand injury and will not be in contention in Friday's clash with Wales in Cape Town. 3 more players were also ruled out of selection for Friday's clash with Wales. It's Tian Jacobs, Mikhail Damon and Tabang Mahashe. Now, junior Bok coach Bafana Ntleko will announce the team for Friday's 7th place playoff against Wales, and it'll happen this afternoon at 3 p.m. Golf now. 8 South African golfers are set to compete in the 152nd Open Championship at Royal Troon in Scotland starting tomorrow. The South African contingent includes Christian Bezuidenhout, Tristan Lawrence, Darren Ficard, Ernie Els, the amateur Alton van der Merwe, Louis Oosthuizen, Dean Burmester and Ryan van Velsen. Rory McIlroy will begin his campaign alongside Tyrrell Hatton and Max Homa, while Tiger Woods will tee off with Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay. The defending champion, Brian Harman, is paired with Victor Hovland and Sahith Theegala. Here's McIlroy.
I know that I'm in a good spot, and if I think about 2015 through 2020, that 5-year stretch, I seldom had a realistic chance to win a major championship in that 5-year period. So I'd much rather have these close calls. It means that I'm getting closer. But yeah, absolutely, I'd love to be able to play the golf and get one over the line. But as soon as I do that, people are going to say, well, when are you going to win your 6th? So it's never ending.
And finally, cycling news. Belgium's Jasper Philipsen sprinted to his 3rd stage victory at the 2024 Tour de France, with Benyam Girmay suffering a late crash on stage 16. Now, Philipsen's Alpecin Deceuninck team dominated in the closing stages before the 26-year-old Philipsen broke clear to the line.
Yeah, every stage win is really hard to get, definitely in this level. So to take 3 is a really good job, and I think we can be proud. I just hope he's okay after the crash, because he doesn't deserve to lose like this, whatever. But I just try whatever we can, but the hard stages are yet to come.
That's a wrap of your Sport on Sunrise for now. We'll bring you more top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll hear from the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, the DA's Andrew Whitfield, in a few moments. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning at 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane says her department has a moral responsibility to ensure issues around the troubled National Student Financial Aid Scheme are resolved as soon as possible. The disciplinary hearing against former ANC President Jacob Zuma is expected to start today. The hearing, which was initially scheduled to take place earlier this year, was postponed by the ANC to make way for the May 29th elections. And the headquarters of Bangladesh's main opposition party, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, has been raided by police. It follows a 3rd day of violent demonstrations against a quota system for civil service jobs. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. There's a big fire in Pretoria, Arcadia area, Hamilton and Durr Park sort of junction, that sort of area. But I understand it may be part of a hospital that's on fire there. But there's a lot of smoke in the area, and there's a lot of traffic congestion through that Arcadia area. Now, the N1 Pretoria down to Joburg being held by a second breakdown this morning in pretty much the same place, just before New Road. Traffic's all the way back heavily to Brockfontein. All the approaches to the highway like Samrand and Oliphants and New Road pretty heavy, and the alternative R101's under some pressure going south as well. Crash scene on the Mike 1 North up at Grayston Drive. That's joining up the peak hour queue with the crash queue. So you've got a queue effectively on the Mike 1 from Gold Reef City all the way through to Parktown, and then Parktown up towards Grayston Drive. And there's also been a crash between Grayston and Corlet on the southbound side, causing some delays there as well. Leaving Pinetown on your way towards the Bluffer, there's a truck on fire on the M7 around Hunstetman, slowing traffic. M7 going into Pinetown. Again, a very heavy backlog up towards St John's Avenue Bridge. And if you're driving into Pietermaritzburg, just an update on the truck crash. I believe they may have opened one lane near Liberty Mall, a truck overturning this morning. The highway was closed. They got the heavy lifting gear in there pretty quickly. We are hearing that maybe there's a little bit of flow capacity coming from Town Hill, but that's a really big backlog of traffic into Pietermaritzburg. If you don't fancy it, come off at Peter Brown and reroute through the central area. Cape Town this morning, pretty heavy highways. The N7, a good example of that, jam-packed both ways into Bosmansdam Road. The M5 is the other route under pressure this morning from Grassy Park, Southfield, all the way through to the N2. There's a breakdown on the M5 North before the N2, and then there's a crash on the N2 inbound at Mowbray Main. So because the N2 is so heavily backed up to Hospital Bend, the M5 not able to sort of freely move in. That's why the M5 is so heavy coming up from the southern side this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intal morning again. How are the markets?
Kicking things off in Asia, equities still mixed, but it seems like sentiment is taking a turn, Stephen, as traders upped its Fed rate cut bets. This then fueled a rush into riskier corners of the market. With that, we saw the Asia Dow up close to 0.2%. China's Shanghai index, however, falling 0.5%. In Wall Street, futures are quite steady with traders eyeing second quarter earnings. Back at home, sentiment is still sour. Traders will be looking out for that local inflation print being released later today. The JSE All-Share in the meantime closed in the red, losing 1.2% yesterday. Over in the currency front, the rand making gains as the dollar falters. It's currently trading at 18.06 to the greenback.
And then South African households remaining under pressure. More on this from 8:30.
Now, this is according to the Altron FinTech Household Financial Resilience Index. In the first quarter of the year, the index revealed that the financial health of local households deteriorated. This comes as many South Africans struggle with high interest rates. Research from the index shows many people are still struggling financially, even more so than before the pandemic. This is because they're spending a growing portion of their income on debt payments, leaving them with less money for other things. Now, the index fell 3.8% on a quarterly basis and 0.6% year on year, weighed down most by an 8.7% annualized slump in the ratio of household income to debt costs. Economists measure the health of households using 20 constituents. Of these constituents, a total of 12 recorded negative year-on-year declines, while 13 recorded quarter-on-quarter declines. Now, despite the downbeat performance, the economist that compiles the report, Roelof Porter, says there should be some relief moving forward, with hopes that the lack of load shedding and the government of national unity will provide forth much needed relief.
And then most economists expecting a cut for the first time only in September. So not this week. There's still quite a long time to go.
Definitely not this week, but it does seem that relief might come just before the end of the year. That's as more and more banks and financial institutions peg rate cuts in September. Recently, we heard from Standard Bank's chief economist, Gulam Balam, saying we are on the cusp of a monetary easing cycle that is going to be a tonic for confidence. In a Business Day article, Balam further said that we are on the cusp of a cumulative 1 percentage point of interest rate relief in South Africa over the next 3 to 4 quarters, which will be a relief to consumers and some level of stimulus for investments. Bank of America also confident of a September rate cut. In its update this week, it expected the SARB to hold rates tomorrow, but expects relief at the September meeting. Yesterday, I also spoke to chief economist at RMB, Zaya Mhlanga, and he is a bit more cautious, pegging in a rate cut in November, saying that local inflation picture is still proving to be sticky. Mhlanga expects inflation to remain around 5% this year. Of course, this is above the SARB's midpoint of 4.5%, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as we get the inflation print for June later today and that rates decision coming tomorrow.
Intal Lingla, thanks so much. Of course, back tomorrow, more business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Taki on the line from Limpopo. Taki, hi. You want to talk about Zuma?
Oh, yes, the disciplinary hearing. But first and foremost, Stephen, via Condios, I heard that you are leaving.
I'm afraid so, Taki, yes. Next Friday, you're stuck with me until then. Thank you.
Yeah, but altogether, Stephen, it has been a love and a hate relationship of Zuma and the ANC. And you will recall at some point that there was a statement by the former President Kgalema Motlanthe about, good riddance. So it speaks volume to say that really the ANC wants to really understand from Zuma to say, what do you mean by saying that you still are a member of the ANC and yet you have another party? So these are the dynamics. They can't really just, it's not a question of they are going to benefit anything. They just want to really come to the bottom of understanding his perspective so much so that at least when this thing is laid to rest, it shouldn't be a matter of maybe it is reprisal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, Taki, there's really a lot to it. Thank you. Taki on the line from Limpopo. Hitler on the line from Boshoff. Hello, Hitler. Paul Kagame, re-elected 99% of the vote.
Yes, Stephen, it tells you a lot. Thank you. Good morning and to the listeners as well, Stephen. Yesterday I was listening to some other callers who were calling to when it was Oliver Dixon. They were ravishing all the percentage which Paul Kagame has received in Rwanda. The people of Rwanda, in other words, they are very happy about the status quo of Rwanda. Look, even the economists have said that Rwanda is one of the flourishing economies in Africa. Have you heard that? Or do you know that, Stephen? Or am I?
No, I do know that, and that's true. But it's also true that that they're supporting M23, which is shooting our soldiers.
Now the people are saying that no, the people, the voting has been, the ballot has been rigged. I say no, and again, the other issue about Rwanda is that Rwanda, they also say that Rwanda is one of the cleanest countries in Africa. It is also true.
Well, I've been there, and I haven't been to everywhere on the continent, so I can't say one way or another, but it is very clean, yes.
Yes, but it tells you something. So the people are very happy about the status quo of Rwanda, and even crime also, irrespective of whether they've just emerged from the genocide of 1994. But it tells you something. But in South Africa, there isn't such things. In South Africa, even a cabinet minister can get robbed, unlike in Rwanda. So I'm very happy about that. If only South Africa can adopt the method of Paul Kagame, I'll be the happiest man under the planet. Lastly, Stephen, I'm very sad, and I feel like I just learned from one of my fellow listeners that you are leaving SAFM. Stephen, why are you leaving, man?
Oh, Hitler.
Where are you going? No, man, Stephen, man. No.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Hitler, but it is true. But I will be leaving.
Oh, Stephen, man. Right? I hope you will have better, greener pastures in the future. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hitler. And thank you for listening, Hitler, and thank you for always contributing. I often think of you. Thank you. Hitler on the line from Boshoff, someone who, from when we started the show, was very involved. Moses in Bramley, hi, good morning. The parole system, and if you listen to the Correctional Services Department, obviously there's a lot to look at here. Moses in Bramley, you with us?
Hey, morning.
Morning, Moses. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Steve, in this country, if you've got your proximity to those who are in power, you'll be given just a second a name of parole. So, ordinary people like me, Moses, and others, we won't actually get that privilege of given parole and stuff like that. Some, they actually happens to be, we are told they are gravely ill. The likes of Shabir Sheikh and his partner in crime, Jacob Zuma. But today they are playing golf. Jacob Zuma is dancing up and down. We are a joke in this country. This is a movie, really.
No, I hear you. All right, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, we must be treated equally. Not that, these people that have committed a very, very serious crime of chowing the money of gogos, people who invested their money, but they are just given No, they should have gone for a longer time, Stevie.
Yep, no, I hear you. Moses on the line from Bramley. These issues always come up. I think there might be a review of the system coming. 18 minutes to 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The new Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, the ANC's Parks Tau, delivering his budget speech yesterday, telling Parliament he wants to have tougher compliance of broad-based black economic empowerment in the private sector. Also wants to ensure there's local procurement to try and grow the economy. And we were due to speak to Parks Tau, the Minister, this morning, unfortunately unable to join us. But he asked if his Deputy Minister, the DA's Andrew Whitfield, could join us instead. He's on the line now. Deputy Minister Whitfield, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me.
How do you believe your department can grow the economy and really to stop the process of deindustrialization that we've seen?
Well, Stephen, the Minister made it clear in his budget speech yesterday that we're placing industrial policy at the centre of our economic growth strategy. And what does that mean? Well, the President has set out for us a very clear mission to charge the department and other departments related to economic development with inclusive growth and job creation. We have to figure out ways to improve what has been done in the past that has worked, to identify opportunities to streamline incentives directly into sectors that are going to convert into jobs and meaningful, sustainable jobs, but also to help small and medium-sized manufacturing enterprises to generate wealth, to become sustainable entities in our economy, and to create jobs well into the future. And so manufacturing-led growth is a key component of the industrial policy-led economic growth strategy, with a focus on driving an export-oriented economy, which is absolutely critical. Our local market simply doesn't have the demand required. We need to explore our existing trade relationships, but also build new export markets in the global economy.
Your minister said yesterday he wants tougher compliance with broad-based black economic empowerment legislation. I presume you agree with him.
Well, the Government of National Unity has agreed to a statement of intent. At the centre of that statement of intent is a commitment to transform an economy which is fundamentally unequal. I don't think that's a controversial statement. That is a statement of fact. Our economy is structurally unequal. We need to find ways to redress the imbalances of the past. And the government's emphasis on broad-based black economic empowerment is really about how does government partner with the private sector. The minister was very clear in driving the word partnership. How do we partner to ensure meaningful redress and empowerment in our economy that brings the outsiders into the inside of the economy? Our economy, Stephen, is characterized by the outsiders and the insiders. And I think that there are ways for us to improve empowerment in government as a partner to the Government of National Unity. Different parties have different ways of thinking about these things. But ultimately, what we need is policy certainty and stability in the short term while we figure out ways to improve, specifically, empowerment to break down the unequal structure of our economy.
Okay, I mean, I asked the question, and I'm sure you saw it coming, Deputy Minister, because it seems to me that this department, Trade, Industry and Competition, is going to be one of the main areas of a possible contestation between the ANC and the DA within the coalition government. I mean, this is where, economics is the essence of politics, and this is really where you'll see the tension, and there's an ANC minister and a DA deputy minister. Do you see it like that?
Yes, well, there's an ANC minister, an ANC deputy minister, and a DA deputy minister. So there's three of us, and we are going to try to find our way through this. I don't think that anybody is under any illusions that different parties have different views on how to approach empowerment. The minister, I must say, I have been pleased with his approach. His approach appears to be, in spite of your analysis, which is correct from his budget speech, he has a much more pragmatic and open approach to figuring out how we move this Government of National Unity forward. So yes, I'm certain that there will be tensions around key policy areas, but I think that the critical thing is to keep an open and pragmatic mind as we confront these challenges, and to use evidence, Stephen. This is a critical component. I mentioned this in the department, I mentioned it in my speech yesterday, and I've mentioned it repeatedly to the minister. We have to be evidence-driven in not only the decisions that we make, but the policies that we formulate. And if the evidence says that something isn't working, we need to revisit that policy and figure out a new way forward. The Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are a key component of our broader policy framework and how we set out to achieve a much more structurally equal economy. And I'm certain that there are going to be some debates into the future, Stephen.
It seems to me, again, and I'm sorry to harp on the point, but in a way, this is the heart of the coalition government. This department right here, because this government will stand or fall. It will be judged, I think, on how well it does at growing the economy. So it seems to me that this is really where the pressure is going to be. Are you optimistic that, given all of the international economic headwinds, possibly China slowing, who knows what's going to happen in the United States, etc., all of those matter to us. But the most important thing we can do is grow jobs. Do you believe it's possible to actually do that?
I absolutely do. And look, you've highlighted some of the impediments that may present challenges and headwinds internally within the Government of National Unity. But I still maintain that while the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition is at the policy center of the economy, there are other departments which are critical. So Operation Vulindlela deals with a number of those other constraints on the economy, such as energy security, logistics, safety, crime, etc. These are all factors that we as a department need to factor into our thinking. How do we look at industrial policy more broadly in the economy? And so while I've spoken about evidence and how that needs to lead decision making, I've also spoken about the fact that we need to ensure a much more cross-cutting and transversal approach to how we deal with economic growth. We cannot operate in silos. If we're able to build partnerships, as we have as political parties, but in government itself, between departments, I think we will extract a lot more efficiency out of the economy. There's a lot more output that can be generated by partnering meaningfully, confronting the very obvious challenges, being honest about them, and having tough conversations to find solutions to those problems. I am confident that we can grow the economy, that we can create jobs, but more importantly, that we can build an inclusive economy that brings the outsiders inside the economy, and that we can start to defeat and push back against the structural inequalities which exist.
Does the evidence show that broad-based black economic empowerment works at bringing the outsiders inside?
Well, I'm going to certainly raise that within the department, that we need to look at how the current empowerment models, whether they've yielded results or not. You'll forgive me, I'm 2 weeks into the department, and I think that the research department within the DTIC could certainly assist us with that. The critical factor is that there are two different political parties in this department. We have different views on this issue. We're going to put our evidence around the table. We're going to have debates on these issues. But central to this, Stephen, and I think that we must understand that transformation as a word has been misused in our body politic. Transformation fundamentally means change. We need to change the way our economy operates. We need to find mechanisms to unlock that. If broad-based economic empowerment is proven to work, which my party has a different view on, but if it's proven to work, well, then we need to concede. If it's not, we need to have a discussion about what is the model that's going to work. Is it means tests? And that we focus on those who are at the bottom end of the economy, who need help the most.
Deputy Minister, thank you very much indeed for the time. I do appreciate it. Be watching it closely. I think it's one of the most important sectors in our government at the moment. Andrew Whitfield is the Deputy Minister of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And of course, for the purposes that it matters, he's with the Democratic Alliance. 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy on the Mike 1 through Joburg this morning. A crash up by Grayston Drive in Sandton. The backlog of traffic's all the way down to Gold Reef City in the Ormonde Boysons area. There's traffic literally all the way through up to that crash at Sandton. The N3 is pretty heavy as well from Cement Factory, moving through Galulis towards Modderfontein Road. Behind that, the N12 and R24 routes in from Ekurhuleni, heavy coming into Galulis. And the N1 stays solid out of Pretoria through Joburg due to a breakdown near New Road. It's just been cleared in the last couple of minutes, actually, but that's a queue that has to work through and process from as far back as John Foster Drive in the Centurion area. Update if you're driving into Pietermaritzburg, arriving from Howick and Hilton from Town Hillside. Truck crash at Liberty Mall. Now, the traffic backlog is fairly extreme here from Maryvale down through Town Hill territory and down towards Chatterton Road. So recovery of that truck crash still underway, and it looks like a massive backlog of truck traffic approaching Pietermaritzburg Johannesburg this morning. The N2 North stays busy from the M7 through Westwood Mall. The M4 Ruthfirst Highway over Blue Lagoon is queuing up towards Virginia Airport. If you're on your way towards Umhlanga, that's a heavy one this morning. And Cape Town, a little bit of rain moving in just to spice up a very busy Wednesday morning. So everything on a go slow. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. There is a crash on the N2 inbound at Mowbray Main Road. So the N2 inbound's heavy from the airport. Behind that, the M5 really struggling along this morning, struggling to get into the N2 and struggling past a broken down vehicle on the M5 at the N2. So heavy queues there, right back to sort of Southfield, Plumstead area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
At SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
8 minutes to 8, you know the number 086 000 2032. Lots going on this morning. Well, ActionSA says the families of those who died in the Lily mine tragedy 8 years ago are being abused because the NPA has still not formally charged anyone with the deaths of Priti Nkambula, Yvonne Mnisi and Solomon Nyirendra. They died when the lamp room they were in underground was swallowed up when the mine collapsed. The Bombela Magistrates Court has ruled that the mine's owners and Mineral Resources, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, can be held criminally liable because the collapse could have been prevented. The leader of ActionSA is Herman Mashaba. Herman, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to SAFM listeners.
You say you want Parliament to act. What do you want Parliament to actually do?
Well, Stephen, as you are aware, at the moment, our government and our law enforcement agencies are in a breach of court orders. There are 3 court orders, including the Constitutional Court, that the retrieval of this container has to be taken as a priority, including the Bombela Magistrate Court in October last year, requesting the NPAs to start proceeding to the criminal proceedings against the officials in the Department of Minerals, Energy, Mine Management, the BRP, Business Rescue Practitioners, and some members of the South African Police. It is now, almost 6 months later, nothing is happening. They've done everything possible, including with the family having a picket 3 months ago at the NPA offices. Up to today, nothing is happening. And Stephen, because we've, I guess, this matter, I'm sure anyone can see that this is a political complicity involved in this matter. And now that we've got a government of national unity, and I think perhaps we can have Parliament intervention as a critical component of what needs to really happen.
Okay, but what would Parliament do? Parliament can't start a court process. This is a little bit, there are resonances here with what happened with Life Esidimeni. We've had the inquest. It's now up to the NPA to decide what to do. It's up to the NPA to decide what to do here, and constitutionally, no one can tell the NPA what to do.
Well, Stephen, the 3 black lives were lost, and government is failing to really do its duty. Parliament has got a responsibility, constitutional responsibility to protect South Africans. They've got committees that can actually get involved. You can have a parliamentary inquiry into this matter as to why our criminal justice systems is actually complicit in this particular matter. Why the Department of Minerals and Energy it's not acting on court orders. You're aware, Stephen, it's not just the 3 lives are lost. The families have been camping outside the mine for 6 years. And Stephen, if anyone expects me as a South African to stand back and not do anything about it, I can tell you people must be rest assured that the Lily mine matter is not really going to go away. We will do everything possible, including if this government is not going to prepare to do anything, and our law enforcement agencies in this country are refusing to act. I can tell you, Stephen, this matter will end up in international courts.
Herman Mashaba, the leader of ActionSA. Thank you. 4 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Jabu on the line from Tswane. Jabu, hi, good morning, the ANC.
Yes, Steve. Firstly, I want to join the chorus and say bon voyage to you.
Thank you, Jabal. Thank you. It's been great to be here.
It was a great inning, and we are going to miss you.
Thank you, Jabal. I'm going to miss you too. All right, the ANC.
The ANC is taking JZ through the disciplinary processes so that there is a record of this disciplinary. Because if they don't do that, history has told them Zuma can come back and spin history and records and reality in the future, and they may have a bigger problem to deal with. I think it is really for just record purposes, which is very important for how history gets written, because written history gets distorted a lot.
Yeah.
Imagine if it's not even written, it gets reframed, and JZ, we know him as a great reframer.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. Yeah, no, the record does matter, Jabu. I hear you. Thank you on the line from Tswane. David in Cape Town, hi. You want to talk about jobs versus careers?
Hi, good morning, Stephen. It's so sad to you leaving. Seriously.
Thank you.
No, I just want to highlight something. We all talk about jobs. Jobs can come and go.
Yeah.
I think we should invest in careers.
Yes.
Careers is a future. How can I say? That will grow the economy and so forth. If people are pushed into a career instead of just a job, then I think the economy will be great and everybody will be happy because everybody's got a future.
And everyone's got
jobs
something.
is a job.
Yeah, and you've got something to look forward to. You have a little bit of power in a career, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. But anyway, Stephen, have a great day, and so sad to hear you going.
No, thank you, David. Very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. David on the line from Cape Town. There is an interesting point, isn't it? We talk about jobs all the time, but the issue of a career is really important. Voice notes coming through this morning on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Brasty. I'm well. I'm listening to your show. It's a great show. It's a sad part that you are going. You are leaving the station. But I want to comment on the issue construction mafia. Brasty, construction mafia, always politicians are involved. Remember that in South Africa, our system works like this. In local government, we have got councillors. So there is no a project that can take place without the councillor being aware. So the councillor does have his buddies that he works with, whom they capture. Most of our councillors, they are captured. Simple as that. Thank you, bro Steve. Have a great day.
Thank you. Yep, sure. That's a strong comment, but I mean, I do hear that kind of view. All right, coming up in the next little while, we'll talk about the non-treatment of cancer in Gauteng, what's happening in the Gauteng Health Department, and then also, have you ever tried to change what you eat? You know how difficult it is? Incredibly difficult. We'll look at that. You're with SFM, leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Higher Education Minister focusing on fixing student funding problems, and Zuma's disciplinary hearing expected to get underway. Good morning. The Higher Education Minister, Nobuhle Nkabane, says her department has a moral responsibility to ensure issues around the troubled National Student Financial Aid Scheme are resolved as soon as possible. She was tabling her department's 137.5 billion rand budget during a mini-plenary sitting of the National Assembly yesterday. NSFAS is under administration for a second time. Nkabane says she's aware of the effects a dysfunctional scheme has on financially needy students.
It is our moral responsibility to resolve these challenges and other matters in the shortest period of time, and all these problems will be addressed in the shortest period possible. Or those harmed by the continued fracture will turn on the system. We understand the magnitude of this responsibility, as institutional inefficiencies have a direct impact on our commitment inscribed in the Freedom Charter, which states that the doors of learning and culture shall be open.
Nkabane has acknowledged that having the scheme under administration for the second time shows a weakness on the department's side.
We acknowledge our strengths and weaknesses in equal measure. It is not desirable that NSFAS is currently under a second administration intervention within 5 years of the conclusion of the previous intervention.
The disciplinary hearing against former ANC President Jacob Zuma is expected to start today. The hearing, which was initially scheduled to take place earlier this year, was postponed by the ANC to make way for the May 29th elections. Zuma has been accused of violating Rule 25 of the ANC Constitution. Sibahle Mota reports.
The disciplinary hearing against former President Jacob Zuma, which seeks to have his ANC membership terminated, will take place virtually. The hearing comes after his announcement in December that he would no longer campaign for the ANC in the 2024 elections, but endorse newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party. This is a move that saw him get suspended by the ANC in January. But Zuma, who now leads the MK party, says that he will always remain a member of the ANC.
A socio-legal expert is expected to continue on the witness stand virtually when the Bavenda Kingship dispute hearing continues in the High Court in Polokwane, Limpopo. Princess Masindi Mpepo, daughter of the late King Chimangatso Mpepo, is challenging her uncle, Tony Mpepo Ramabulana, for the crown. The legal battle over the Bavenda Kingship has been going on for several years. Michael Makungo reports.
Yesterday, social legal expert Dr. Sindiso Mnisi has told the court that the traditional communities should develop customary laws that are consistent with the Bill of Rights. She will continue to testify virtually. She took a witness stand on Tuesday. The Bavenda throne claimant, Princess Masindi Mpepo, concluded her testimony arguing that she is the rightful heir to the throne. The matter is being heard before 3 judges.
And finally, the headquarters of Bangladesh's main opposition party, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, have been raided by police. It follows a third day of violent demonstrations against a quota system for civil service jobs. Yesterday, riot police fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse protesters who had blocked roads in the capital, Dhaka, and elsewhere. The BBC's Tom Bailey reports.
These are the first significant anti-government protests since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina won a 4th straight term in January. Earlier on Tuesday, her government ordered all schools, colleges and universities to close indefinitely in response to the unrest that has seen at least 6 people killed during clashes between opponents and supporters of the quotas. The protesters are demanding a merit-based system to replace the current allocations.
Recapping the top story, Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane says her department has a moral responsibility to ensure issues around the troubled National Student Financial Aid Scheme are resolved as soon as possible. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Many insurers claim to be the best, but the proof is in the numbers. Outsurance has consistently had the best ombudsman for short-term insurance results for the past 11 years. And Outsurance clients always get something out. Outsurance pays over 1.7 million rand in out bonuses every day. Why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754, or visit outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's rugby. The Springboks, they suffer a major setback with 4 key players injured ahead of the Rugby Championship. And we take a look to the South African athletes getting ready for the Paris Olympics. All this and more just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy backlogs on your way to Sandton this morning, coming in from the southern side of Joburg. It's a crash on the Mike 1 at Grayston Drive. It's been there quite some time. It's a really big queue that starts around Boyson's this morning. So if you're on your way up through central Joburg, on your way to Sandton, look at Rivonia Road or Louis Botha Avenue as your alternatives. That Rivonia-Oxford route up through Rosebank on your way to Sandton is busier. There's extra volume there, but those side roads will be quicker than straight through on the Mike 1. It really is an exceptionally heavy morning. The N1 N1 South stays under pressure as well from John Foster Drive right down to New Road. So Centurion through Midrand is the problem. Major delay alert if you're driving to Durban, coming into Pietermaritzburg, a truck crash near Liberty Mall. It looks like authorities have got the closure in now about Peter Brown, so nothing getting sort of south of Town Hill. Really big backlogs. If you're in from Howick, off-ramp at Merivale, off-ramp at Sadara, and hit some alternative routes, those routes will be very busy as well. And Cape Town, some rain across the city area this morning. Slippery conditions. Take it nice and easy. There's a lot of pressure on the highways, so make sure you've got extra time to get through it as well. The N7 up to Bosmansdam Road, leaving Goodwood, stays heavy. And there's a crash on the N2 into town at Mowbray Main Road, keeping the pressure on from the airport side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
It's 7 after 8. Good morning, you're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Critters. Well, more to come. There's so many interesting conversations that come out of the coalition government. You heard Andrew Whitfield there, the Deputy Minister for Trade, Industry and Competition from the DA, and I made the point that for me is the department where some of this tension, contestation, let me use that word, may come out. I mean, it might well depend on the relationship between him and the Minister. Park Star, there's an ANC Deputy Minister there too. There'll be other places where this happens. You heard from Satu earlier. They were talking about Siviwe Gachube, the DA's new Minister of Basic Education. I mean, that's an interesting thing, you know, how people see that. I think there are important questions there around what's going to happen in education. Other conversations in correctional services, these prisoners who literally were just doing what they liked, it seemed. I mean, that's a major, major issue. So we'll be looking at that as well. There's so many different things to actually look at. And all of this, in a way, is going to come to a head slightly, or a focal point, I should say, when the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, does his big speech tomorrow. So very interesting to sort of see all of the directions that this can go in. We'll take your calls on that on 086 000 2032. In Gauteng, still big issues with the fact that the Gauteng Department, Health Department, has not spent the money it said it would spend on helping cancer patients. And the thing about that is that people will literally die. You know, that's the scary thing. And of course, former President Jacob Zuma, very much in the news again this morning, 8 minutes after 8.
There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care. But more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
eThekwini Municipality is excited to host the Resurgence Conference Durban 2024, an international investment conference themed Moving the Needle Towards Economic Emancipation. The conference will profile Durban as an investment city from the 17th till the 21st of July at Durban ICC. It features exhibitions, conference engagements led by global and local esteemed sectoral experts and several empowerment opportunities. Also featuring the Resurgence Gospel Fest on 20 July, headlined by American gospel legends Shirley Caesar and Bishop Hezekiah Walker. Sharing the global stage with international acts are local gospel stars Dumi Mkokstad, Ayanda Ntanzi, Oli Mwango, and Mobi Ngumalo. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro.
The world's best cooking show is coming to S3. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Upumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Starts Saturday 13 July at 7:30 p.m. on S3 Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, that's the number. 11 minutes after 8 the time. Pamela on the line from Woodmead in Gauteng. Pamela, hi. It says here you want to talk about the taxi industry. What's happened?
Hey, Stephen. Good morning to you and the SFM listeners, man. Hey, man, it's difficult these days being a Bolt and Uber driver. Let me just say, being an e-hailing driver is becoming, very, very difficult. So these days, I'm calling here because I remember I'm just not sure who invited the people from Shesha.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So but what they didn't tell you is that they won't be doing any marketing. There is zero marketing for Shesha.
That's true, actually. Yes, that's a good point. I mean, they have a person, but yeah.
Yeah, but what they are doing, they are Santaco. Yeah, and I will mention Santaco. Santaco is using the taxi patrollers to do roadblocks, like actual roadblocks, like police. They do roadblocks, and they stop each and every car, and they I can tell you yesterday, there is even evidence. That's the beauty about it. There is even evidence, like yesterday they were in Tembisa. They were doing roadblocks there. If they find an Uber or Bolt driver, they tell the driver, no, you can't continue with this person. You must leave them here. They must use Shesha.
Wow. So you're being forced to stop driving, and passengers are being forced to use an app they didn't choose.
Yeah, and now they are saying Tembisa is a Shesha area. 2 days ago they were in Midrand.
Wow.
They were at Midrand, how train station, you think. So it's becoming a very, very big problem. And you see, with Shesha, some of us, we batched in, we downloaded the Shesha app, we paid the 50 rand initiation fee, and then you must pay 250 rand for a sticker, for a Shesha sticker. Okay, fine. We did all that. We've put the Shesha stickers on our cars. The problem is you sit the whole day with zero requests. People are not using Shesha.
Yeah.
They are forcing drivers, but they are not able to force the riders, the people. They can't force the people to use Shesha. You see, so now, and it's a big problem, Stephen, because the moment you show resistance, you get beaten up. And imagine at 7 a.m. and you're being beaten up, and we have no choice because as a Bolt and Uber driver, you work alone. You are one man. 6 people will come and gang up on you. And it's Santaco, it's Santaco people, like the taxi patrollers, there is videos already out there. Even the one in Tembisa where there was a roadblock yesterday, there is videos. There is no way Santaco can come and say those are not their people. There is videos. Their cars are there. The cars from the taxi associations are there.
Yeah.
Even in Midrand. In Midrand, luckily, it was one of the taxi squad men who recorded the video to say Midrand is this Midrand housing station is now a Shesha area.
Sure. Pamela, I mean, it's entirely kind of what you expect. And you'll have heard me fight with Santaco about this. They've always denied doing this kind of thing, but we know they do it. Pamela, I mean, I don't know if Bolt or Uber could do anything. And I mean, it takes us back to the same question, which is where are the police?
The police, they only, these guys were in Gauteng Midrand station on Monday. The police only did a patrol yesterday. So the police, we understand, man, the police are quite understaffed.
Yeah.
That's just the truth about ASAPS. So at times, they only come after the fact, especially for this. We are considered like small fishes, we are considered like a small issue, you see.
Yeah.
So the police will usually come after the fact to attend to Bolt and Uber issues. That's just the reality of it.
Pamela, thank you, and I'm sorry to hear that that's happened to you. And we know that members of Santaco do this. They've denied it, but to force people to use Shesha, I wonder if Stanza, if maybe we need to sort of get Shesha on and see if they have a response at some point. Let's see if we're able to do that. Maybe it'll be tomorrow, just the way that the morning is going. Kolisi on the line from eThekwini. Hi, former President Jacob Zuma. He's got that big disciplinary today.
A very good morning to you, Stephen.
Good morning.
Can I call for it?
Yes, please.
I'll meet you, Stephen. Stephen, it's just an advice to the African National Congress. They mustn't allow to use the emotions to attend to this hearing, Zuma's hearing.
Oh, really?
Because if they do that, they'll end up making the wrong move. Then it will be a problem for them. But at the end of the day, the old man he made a mistake. He will leave ANC at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But they mustn't allow to use the emotions, because if they do that, it will backfire to the ANC. The last one, Stephen, if they're gonna use whatever he said in the social media or in any briefing saying he will no longer campaign for the ANC, if they're gonna use that as an evidence, I don't think it will be sufficient. They need to find something written. If he got a membership of MK as a MK party, if he got a membership, yes, he can be. But if he doesn't have a membership, if they're gonna only rely on what he said, I think it will be a problem.
I mean, it's a strange thing, but I would presume the fact that the Electoral Commission recognizes him as the leader of MK, because remember there was that fight with him and I forget his name now, the person who formerly started Kumalo, Jabulani Kumalo. Thank you. But there was that dispute, and the Electoral Commission said no, Jacob Zuma is the leader of MK. I'm sure that would be enough to prove that particular point in this.
It can be enough, and it cannot be enough, because if you remember correctly, it was just for them to go to elections, but they haven't elected him as the leader, as the party itself. He was just appointed by Jabulani Kumalo to lead for elections. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. If they're going to use that as their evidence, saying he needs to be fired or whatever because of what he said, it will be a problem. They need to find something in writing as a membership card or whatever membership of MK to wear the other political party a T-shirt means nothing. But they need to fight. But it will come back to say, even our current president, he said he is a farmer, he makes money off buying and selling, but our public protector didn't find it against him because of that. He said he was looking for something in written. So currently, I don't think they will win if they're going to use that Stephen.
Khaleesi, thank you. Yeah, very interesting point. I wonder how technical it'll get. Maybe it won't get that technical, but I hear you. Thank you. Mpo, on the line from Randfontein, also in Gauteng. Hi. Also on Zuma. Mpo, go for it.
No, thank you very much. Maybe just as a preamble to the guy who have just spoken. I mean, what evidence would you want if there's so much that he has pronounced on radio, on TV, not in person? So, and the celebrations that you have heard about the happiness of being a member of MK. So, you don't necessarily need a written thing. That's evidence. But the point I wanted to really make is your initial guy who, the doctor you invited.
Ralph Mateja, yes.
Yeah. No, I think he was fairly lazy on how he did an analysis. You can't set up processes in an organization and then you say they will not pay value if you are to apply them. I.e., the guy says the ANC would be not doing good to put Zuma into I mean, it's necessary for your records, one, but not only that, for your respect of your processes. You are running an organization, not a spaza shop of some kind.
Yeah.
Where you change as you want. So in that case, I don't think the doctor was helpful in drilling deeper to say what needs to happen. But I think you continue to say things that are not related. I mean, if you call opposition liberal, what do you mean? We are not sure how they're going to play. They are all liberal. You could actually go explain what is liberal. Because I'm sure yourself, my brother, sometimes these doctors, you must extract it, because they could be bragging with titles, but they play very little in helping.
Well, look,
information.
Paul, thank you. I mean, you're allowed to be critical of our guests, of course. I've known Ralph Mateja for many years, and my understanding, of course, is that his qualifications are entirely legitimate. So, yeah, Paul, you can be critical, of course, but I will support our choice in this case of using Dr. Ralph Mateja. 21 after 8.
What do you want from an insurer? Affordable premiums and awesome service when you claim, right? Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Mpo. I'm 42 years old from Cape Town. I pay $495 per month for my Ford Figo 2014 with OUTsurance Essential Cover.
SMS out to 30754 and see if you can save. but you also want to know your claim is going to be settled without any issues. Every year, the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance releases a report showing how the country's insurers did. And when it came to claims, of all the major insurers, OUTsurance has had the fewest complaints referred by clients to the Ombudsman for the past decade. Now that's awesome claim service.
I'm not surprised OUTsurance had such few complaints because in my experience with OUTsurance, everything has been amazing.
Real savings, really happy clients. Go to outsurance.co.za right now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
If you love premium documentaries, then we know you love Thursday nights on S3. Broadcaster Alice Levine asks if there's anything such as normal when it comes to sex and sexuality in the 2020s. She meets sexual adventurers up and down Britain, those pushing the boundaries of sex, intimacy and relationships. Tune into Sex Actually, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
July is Film Month. The KwaZulu-Natal Tourism and Film Authority welcomes filmmakers from all over the world who are attending the exciting festivities lined up. The Durban International Film Festival, Durban Film Mart and Isipetu program. The Simon Sabela KZN Film and Television Awards on the 20th of July. We look forward to hosting you in our beautiful province and doing tourism and film business. Join the conversation using hashtag SSA24, hashtag Beyond Imagination, hashtag KZN has it all.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Well, there's been news this week, and it's difficult. It's sort of amazing that things have got here. That a group of civil society organisations are now taking the Gauteng Health Department to court because it hasn't spent 784 million rand to treat cancer patients when the money was, in fact, budgeted and allocated. Salome Meyer is from the Cancer Alliance. Salome, good morning.
Good morning to you and all to your listeners.
Why are you now going to court?
We've been trying for years to negotiate and mediate on behalf of our cancer patients with Gauteng Health Department to in fact start with the treatment of 3,000 patients, and nothing has been done. At first, they claimed that they didn't have the equipment or the money to do it, and then the money was awarded, and up until to date, nothing has been done. But what they have done is they have allocated 250 million for the planning of the radiation cancer treatment, and that we say is absolutely absurd because, in fact, you can treat 3,000 patients with that 250 million rand. So something is wrong somewhere.
Did I hear you correctly? They spent 200 million rand on planning, not on actually doing anything.
250 million, a contract was awarded immediately after our protest march in April. They came and they indicated that they had awarded the tender for the planning services. And we need to understand that service is going to be outsourced, is obviously an outsourced service that will be conducted in, as far as we know, in India for these patients. And that then still doesn't mean that the other two parts of the service that patients will require, which is your professional service from a radiation oncologist, as well as the treatment with the actual, or in the hospital with the machine and the radiographer, that part has not been awarded as such. But what we also now know is that very disingenuously, the department have now actually advertised a tender for services to treat the patients after we had served them with the court papers.
Sure. It all seems so bizarre. The money is there. It could treat patients. The thing about cancer, of course, is that if you don't treat it early, people will literally pass on. And there seems to be no desire to even spend it. I find it difficult to understand.
That is exactly what we are trying to say, that you've actually had this money for more than a year, and we've indicated to you that it is urgent, and exactly what you've explained, and that is why we now ask that as part of our court proceedings, that first of all, that the tender be set aside, but secondly, that the backlog list be updated, because our estimate is that a third of patients will still require radiation therapy. The other third would now be re-diagnosed with other cancers, meaning the cancer has either spread or metastasized, and therefore would require systemic treatment, which will cost, in any case, per patient close to 250,000 rand, or another third of those patients would either have died or would not need treatment at all anymore. And that, in essence, will also indicate to us the enormity of this problem. We've seen with Life Esidimeni what has happened when people do not do what they are supposed to be doing. And this is one of them where we're saying government is obliged to actually make sure that the right and the health right of patients are actually adhered to.
Salome Maya, thank you from the Cancer Alliance. Really appreciate the time. That's a very, very bizarre story. 27 minutes after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Rassie Erasmus looking at the injuries.
Yes, unfortunately, there are injuries in the Springbok camp. Key players undergoing assessments. Erasmus says he will keep us updated on their status. 4-star players sidelined: Peter Steph du Toit, Cheslin Colby, Franco Mostert and Malcolm Marx, all injured during the recent test against Ireland in Durban. Du Toit and Mostert will be up and out for 6 weeks, while Marx is dealing with a tibia fracture. Cheslin Colby is expected to return for the second test in Australia. Now, despite these setbacks, Coach Erasmus remains optimistic, with Kenan Moody set to return to full training next week. The Boks will kick off their campaign against Australia at the Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. That's on the 10th of August. More rugby news. The Blitz Boks are gearing up for the Olympic Games in Paris after a challenging season. Despite a rough start and the resignation of coach Sandile Ngobo, they've secured their Olympic spot by winning the World Rugby Sevens repechage tournament in Monaco. Interim coach Philip Snyman is focusing on a one-match-at-a-time approach, aiming to keep the team under the radar. The Blitz Boks will face tough competition in their pool, with matches against Ireland, New Zealand and Japan starting on the 24th of July. And you can catch the action on SABC Sport, as well as support our teams. Soccer news. Tanzania's young African performance analyst Mpho Maruping says he's able to grow in his new space as South African football coaching staff continue to grow their footprint on the African continent. The former University of Pretoria captain says he will have good company going into the new season, with one of his former colleagues at Amatux, Sequela Seroto, having joined Yanga as head of physiotherapy. This comes hot on the heels of a full South African technical team led by head coach Fadlu Davids, having also joined arch rival Simba Sports Club. A 32-year-old Maruping is looking forward to having his countrymen around.
Yeah, but at the end of it, it's good to see that even fellow South Africans are also in Tanzania. I saw that they went to Simba, but obviously, it's work at the end of the day. We can only just wish them well, but we continue to work. We'll keep in touch there and there because we know each other even from home. We'll just still keep in touch, but work is work. When it comes to having to play, we give our best, praying, hoping that all goes well for young Africans.
And finally, elsewhere, England fullback Kyle Walker has been named in the Euro 2024 team of the tournament alongside 6 players from champion Spain. The Manchester City defender played every minute for England in Germany as the 3 Lions finished runners-up. That's a wrap of your sport now on Sunrise. More at around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. In a moment, inflation, interest rates and you. That's next. You're there, SFM, leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party says the SABC's continuous use of the Government of National Unity term is misleading and borderline unconstitutional. The MK Party has filed an urgent application in the High Court in Johannesburg to stop the public broadcaster from referring to the 7th administration as a Government of National Unity on its platforms. The Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane says her department has a moral responsibility to ensure issues around the troubled National Student Financial Aid Scheme are resolved as soon as possible. And the Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for Monday's attack on a mosque in Oman that killed 6 people and wounded nearly 30. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The bike one in Joburg starting to ease now. The run through to Sandton after an earlier crash at Grayson Drive. The southbound is actually heavier now, coming from Buccleuch down towards the Sandton off-ramp. Crash on 14th Avenue near the N1. So if you're moving off on Deckers onto 14th Avenue going north, it's slow. And some queues on the N14 approaching Mouldersdrift. If you're coming up from Pinehaven on your way to Pretoria, having left Krugersdorp this morning, an unusual queue there. A couple of major delays around KZN. A big truck and bus crash just south of Matuba. Section of the N2 is under real pressure. That's between Kwabanombi and Matuba. If you're on that section of the N2 this morning, there'll be some real waiting around to get through. The N3 going into Pietermaritzburg remains closed for truck crash recovery from Town Hill all the way down to Liberty Mall. There's a really big backlog of traffic this morning coming in from Howick, a backlog of truck traffic. Motorists will get out of it, will be diverted at Sadara or Hilton, but there will be some significant delay events on that particular stretch coming into Pietermaritzburg. The N2 north, that stays busy up towards Mhlanga. Queues just after the Queen Nandi Drive exit. If you're on your way to the airport, that's quite a big queue. Make sure you've got time to get through. And Cape Town taking a while to clear up a crash on the N2 into town at Mowbray Main Road. It's having an impact on multiple routes. The N2 inbound from the airport's heavy. The M5 coming through from Kenilworth is struggling to get into the N2. And routes just on the southern side of the highway through Mowbray are heavily backed up. The sort of Forest Drive, Rappenberg Road option, Klipfontein Road, Lisbeth Parkway going north up towards the N2. A lot of congestion, all sort of around that Rondebosch Common area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
It's Truck Month at Ford, and that means one thing. You save big when you upgrade to a 4x4. For a limited time only, get a Ford Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month. Visit your nearest Ford dealer to get the best deal on a Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month with free 4x4 driver training. TNCs apply.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time for your mediated conversation. Tomorrow afternoon, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank is due to announce whether it's decided to keep interest rates on hold or finally to start cutting rates. Since the end of the pandemic, inflation has kept much of the world in its grip, and in particular, we've seen food prices moving upwards very, very strongly. This led our Reserve Bank and other central banks to keep interest rates high in a bid to stop inflation. Now, there's some evidence that inflation's finally coming down, and that might allow the bank and others to finally cut rates. So then, what are the chances of a rate cut? Is this the beginning of a new cycle that will see interest rates coming down? And if that happens, what will be the consequences for our economy? Will it lead to more jobs? And will our property market start to move? In other words, from tomorrow, could we finally have a chance to breathe? Or will we have to wait until September and hold our breath until then? First this morning, Ndumiso Kubeka is the chief economist at KH Equity Partners. He'll discuss the possible chances of an interest rate cut tomorrow. Then the impact of high inflation and high interest rates. And are interest rates really the only way to deal with this? Mervyn Abrahams is the Programme Coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. And finally, the impact of all of this on property. Carlo Mariani is a property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. We start then with Ndumiso Kubeka, the Chief Economist at KH Equity Partners. Ndumiso, good morning and thanks for your time.
Stephen, and thank you so much for having me.
We all remember how inflation peaked here, and in other places, in fact, inflation was much higher, not that that makes us feel any better. It went above 10% in the US and the UK. Since then, inflation has come down significantly. Is this the right moment for the Reserve Bank to start cutting interest rates?
Indeed, I think in the beginning of the year, our estimations were that by mid this year, we would have seen an interest rate cut already taking place. But of course, as a result of the inflation numbers, which have been relatively sticky, that has made the central bank rather cautious in terms of interest rate cuts. And so tomorrow, we're then likely there's a 50% chance of having a rate cut, which would have significant relief not only to consumers that have some kind of debt in their portfolio, but also in terms of the new government that we have and the macroeconomic policy reforms as to what that needs to look like over the next 5 years. And so in a worst case scenario, the anticipation has been that in the last part of this year, that's when we'd start the rate cutting cycle starting to begin at an accelerated pace.
I suppose the question then is, what does it take to convince the Monetary Policy Committee to actually cut rates and keep them down? And this starts taking us to conversations around the midpoint of the target, which is between 3% and 6%, or whether inflation needs to be below that 4.5% mark. And I realize I'm asking you to predict the behavior of other people.
No, I think it's a valid inquiry there, Stephen, because what we've seen over the last 3 years is that inflation has largely been driven by energy and food prices, to an extent whereby even the IMF conducted a comprehensive study dating back from the 1970s to try and understand what are the biggest drivers of inflation, and particularly in the period within which we find ourselves today. And consistently, that question of energy and food prices, driven by some geopolitical events, have really driven the effects of that uptick in terms of prices. Now, some other economists at a scholarly level now have even raised the issue to say, look, should there not be even a profit cap, for example, when it comes to key areas which are driving inflation, which is a big debate and quite controversial from the scholarly circles. But this is really to try and deepen our understanding in terms of how can we best ensure that there's price stability, particularly for emerging markets. In the US in particular, which is South Africa tends to signal the interest rate cycle to that of the US. And of course, even when it comes to global growth, South Africa tends to have a similar trend when it comes to that as well. They have what they call the Zuma rule, which really looks at the 3-month moving average of unemployment. And what we've seen is that almost a 0.5% increase in that 3-month moving average number tends to signal a recession, which is the implication of aggressive rate hiking cycles, which tends to then slow down the heating of the economy. So in this instance, in the South African environment, as we've been seeing progress when it comes to inflation numbers, we're then likely to see that rate cut. But of course, it requires also another deepening understanding as to whether or not a midpoint or a reduced midpoint number is the way to go, given that we still need to look at growth and the implications on growth with respect to that.
I mean, the risk, of course, is if you cut too early, inflation might spike again, and that's what the banks want to avoid. And they're kind of held accountable for that.
Indeed. And I think it becomes more difficult, Stephen, to sort of try a new process of managing the inflation cycle, because the implications are quite dire for you and I as consumers and users of debt or credit lines in certain instances. And of course, also ensuring that having price stability against the background of ensuring that there's sustainable growth, that sort of criterion is also managed quite sensitively, especially in a big election year where we're likely to see increased news flow, which are likely to lead to a stronger dollar against emerging markets like ourselves, further weakening our purchasing power. So there are quite a number of factors that the central bank has to factor in, and even scenarios which are in a worst-case scenario, what would be the implication of a possible rate cut tomorrow in the event that things go south at a geopolitical level.
You spoke about energy, was it food prices, I think, that have been identified as driving inflation. There are other shocks that could come. You mentioned the elections. I mean, a Trump victory in the US, and if he were to impose new tariffs and then a trade war with China, etc., there's still possibly shocks to come to the global economy, is the point.
You're quite correct, Stephen, particularly when we look at the current account deficits of countries such as the US, the UK, and China. These are important for our case in South Africa because these are the three of our biggest trading partners. And so whenever you have a shock of that nature, which has an impact in terms of demand in those economies, it inevitably affects the demand that we have in our country, particularly because we continue to be a big exporter of commodities, for instance, to China. We trade in some key commodities with the US, and of course our links with the UK companies, and of course trade with the UK is also quite significant. So because there would be implications in terms of how they manage their fiscal policy arrangements, it will affect the demand in those environments, inevitably affecting growth prospects for the South African environment. And so the huge political events that we'd like to see, for instance, if we were to see a Trump victory and the propositions he's been driving around renewed tariffs, will continue to put pressure on our growth prospects in South Africa.
If interest rates come down, obviously it would be over time, be a glide path. How big would the impact be? I mean, would it lead directly to more economic activity? Would there be more jobs?
Certainly. I think the multiplier effect would certainly result to that, because when interest rates then come down, it therefore means that you and I, Stephen, have an extra 1,000 rand that we can catch up over coffee. And of course, we'd see the effects of that in the retail sales environment, which is a sensitive indicator that we look at on a month-to-month basis to see the health of the economy. And ultimately, that would mean that those restaurateurs or those retailers would need to employ an additional person to sort of fill in the gap for increased demand. And so as we see the decline in interest rates over time, it will have that spin-off effect even in the medium term. The big picture, I think, in the context of where we are now, as we just come from an election, is how we then have a greater macroeconomic coordination of monetary policy, industrial policy, and fiscal policy in a manner that will drive sustained economic growth in the long term. Because when we talk interest rates or interest rate policy rates, as it were, it typically addresses the short to medium term. But the big question is around when we look at a timeline of 3 to 5 to 7 years, what does that mean for the South African picture? And of course, for our fortunes between you and I, whether it be our investment portfolios or even growth prospects, even for the children and education prospects and so forth.
Ndumisa Kubeka, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Ndumisa Kubeka is Chief Economist at KH Equity Partners. You with SFM, your mediated conversation around inflation, interest rates, and you continues ahead of tomorrow's big announcement. 17 minutes now to 9. The time. Mervyn Abrahams is the Programme Coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Mervyn, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to all your listeners.
I suppose probably nearly all of us owe some kind of debt. Sometimes it's debt on your home, sometimes it's really short-term debt, money you've borrowed just to get through the month. Often that's the case. What impact have high interest rates had on people? I get a sense sometimes that people are just feeling almost crushed by the load.
So exactly, Stephen, and South African households, and here we talk in particular the middle class, because they're the ones who have to service the most debt in South African households, have felt crushed. You see, the issue is that they've had to take from whatever savings they might have had and increased, of course, the debt servicing due to the higher interest rates. And often that has led to very little money left in the budget to purchase food, to purchase clothes, etc. And the impact of that ripples right through the economy, as Ndumiso had said. So it's really a difficult time for South African households, and therefore we are hoping that the Reserve Bank will begin its cutting process tomorrow, even though it seems at this stage a bit unlikely with the high CPI figures that we have seen last month, for instance.
There's always a big debate about this. Okay, so high interest rates are very difficult for everyone, but you need interest rates to stop inflation, and have high interest rates, stopped inflation from being worse than it was. And Mervyn, this gets to the heart of the dilemma, and it's what people argue about all the time.
Exactly. So, of course, you have to use interest rates as a means to keep inflation down, because inflation is bad for everyone, in particular the poorest of South Africa, because what we do need is, as Ndumiso had said, we do need price stability, but price stability at an affordable level. So interest rates should only be one instrument. I mean, we're always talking about the connection between South Africa and the US. But when we look at the mission of our Reserve Bank versus the mission of the US Fed, we will see that the US Fed also has to consider factors such as economic growth. They also have to consider labor market when they make their decisions around interest rates. And unfortunately, in our context, that is not part of the mission of the Reserve Bank. So perhaps the time has come for us to begin to ask whether our Reserve Bank and the use of interest rates as the only instrument to fight inflation is perhaps the better one.
It's quite a string you're pulling at, Mervyn. I mean, you never know where a debate like that ends.
Yes. But you see, it is also, as Ndumiso had said, and I agree with him in terms of the long-term strategy, Stephen. I mean, we can no longer afford to be making short-term or medium-term decisions. We have to begin to look at how does our industrial policy in terms of creation, of job creation, do we constantly become an exporter of commodities versus adding value to some of that in the country? We need to have a broad picture, because inflation is sometimes out of our control. Sometimes it is caused by a Russia-Ukraine conflict that pushes up the prices of food because and fertilizers, etc. So we really do need to begin to think long term and what would serve the South African economy best from that perspective.
There are all sorts of debates. I mean, on the one side, as you say, I think people need a little bit of relief, and this would be a moment for the bank to sort of signal that, maybe things are going to get just a little bit easier. On the other hand, the concern that inflation could still, get out of control or be difficult to control, and that pushes food prices up again. So it may, if you're a central banker, you're not supposed to take risks. They may be tempted just to keep things where they are for a couple more months, even though they know it will make it tougher for people for longer.
Yeah, so that is our expectation. I mean, the Reserve Bank has been quite transparent in that they've said that they are looking for inflation to come down to somewhere around 4% or 4.5%. And we've seen last month that inflation, the CPI was standing at 5.2. So the expectation is not that there will be a cut, even though that is our greatest hope. But it is important to keep inflation down, but we also have to understand what keeping interest rates at this level does to the South African economy. For instance, it has a negative impact on investment in terms of productive activity. It has a negative impact on consumer economic activity. It has a negative impact on issues such as the amount of food that households can purchase. So all of those should also be part of the scenario. And Stephen, we also, what Ndumiso had said as part of our long-term strategy, we also have to look at Eskom. Increasing electricity tariffs above inflation has a major impact and could potentially lead to an inflationary increase again, because electricity is such an important part of the production process. So really, I mean, you have Eskom and NERSA, that is a state company, increasing inflation at these tariffs at this stage, with the potential to increase inflation while South African households are suffering. So, somewhere there needs to be somebody who say, look, this just does not make sense.
Mervyn Abrahams, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Program coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. As I say, there are lots of debates in this space. We're going to move in a moment to the situation regarding property, which for many, many people is the main store of their wealth. You with SAFM, it's just gone 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM.
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Let's take you down to KZN for a couple of big delays this morning. One is the ongoing closure of the N3 approaching Pietermaritzburg. The road effectively closed from Peter Brown downtown Hill down to Liberty Mall for recovery of a truck that overturned earlier this morning. Enormous backlog of traffic, as you can imagine, almost back towards Maryvale. Motorists will get caught up. There will be some delays, and you'll be able to off-ramp at Sadara or probably even possibly Hilton. But there will be obviously delays on the N3 and then some extra pressure, as you can imagine, on the alternative routes going into Pietermaritzburg. If you don't fancy it and you want to get from Howick through to Pietermaritzburg or through to Durban, travel later if that's at all possible. Just staying in or down into Durban, the N2 North stays heavy towards the Mhlanga exit. If you're on your way to the airport, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through that. And a major truck crash, looks like a truck and a bus, maybe a couple of trucks and a bus, just south of Matuba. There's some very heavy backlogging going on that section of the N2, northern parts of KZN, and probably take a while to clear that scene. Joburg, the bike one, staying pretty slow this morning in towards Sandton. Northbound hasn't really sort of recovered from an earlier crash up by Grayson Drive. It's still busy. Boyson's through to Sandton. Southbound from Buccleuch, moving down to Sandton, pretty busy. And the N1, similar sort of deal, just sluggish between John Foster Drive and New Road as you go slowly through Midrand towards Joburg as well. Cape Town, a couple of issues around Hospital Bend. One is a collision on the N2 inbound before the bend, and then a broken down vehicle taxi that sort of ended up sideways inside the bend. So the N2 inbound stays heavy from the airport. Behind that, the M5 is all choked up coming through from Kenilworth to try and get into that N2 traffic. And there's a lot of congestion just south of the highway through Mowbray, routes like Klipfontein Road, Rappenberg Road coming off Forest Drive, and also particularly Lisbeth Parkway heading north towards the N2. A lot of congestion in that part of Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continuing your mediated conversation about inflation, interest rates, and you. 8 minutes now to 9 the time. Carlo Mariani is a property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. Carlo, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to all your listeners.
It seems that interest rates have been high for as long as I can remember, and that's not really true. They've been high since the end of the pandemic. What impact has that had on the property market?
I think we tend to stress about interest rates way too much as property investors in particular. I think we need to go back to the fundamentals that interest rates is a cycle, and we should approach it with that sort of peace of mind that they will go up, they will go down. And unfortunately, most investors are driven by fear and greed, which means that when interest rates were at all-time lows a few years ago, they simply bought the wrong properties, and they bought too much property and they paid too much, because the commentary in the market was, well, there's never been a better time to buy property because interest rates are so low. And those very same people forgot that it's a cycle. So I think that investors shouldn't stress too much about what the Reserve Bank will do tomorrow or will do in 2 months' time or beyond. And keep in mind the medium to long-term trajectory of the property market. And we were just very recently reminded by Lightstone Property that in 1994, the average property price in South Africa was below 140,000 Rand. Now the same property would be worth about 1.4 million. So that's a ratio of 10x. And that has happened through interest rates being as high as 17%, being as low as 5%. So I think it's important we keep perspective, and we always invest with a margin of safety, expecting interest rates to go up, and be ready to absorb those interest rates when they go up, and then to rejoice when they go down, and to keep the extra money we save on interest rates when they go down into a safety kitty instead of spending on cappuccinos or holidays. So when they go back up, we don't have to stress too much about it. I think that's my key message for all existing and future property investors in South Africa.
No one ever died without a cappuccino, Carlo. If
and you're talking, don't forget you're talking to an Italian as well.
I know. So in a case like this, right? If interest rates did come down, are you suggesting it wouldn't really have a big impact on property prices? I think there's some people, obviously depending where they are. I think if you're trying to sell a property in Gauteng or eThekwini, you probably, gosh, can something happen to move this price up a bit? Whereas if you're trying to buy a property in the Western Cape, you're just desperate for prices to come down.
Yeah, I think the impact in the short term is highly overrated, and it's not going to have such a material impact. But I would like to share two very practical action points for your listeners around how to take interest rates into your hands and making sure that they do go down by a 0.25 percentage point tomorrow, no matter what Reserve Bank Governor Kganyago does, which is to get in contact with the bank that holds your home loan, and to basically say, I've been a great client of yours, and I've been paying in full on time for the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and it is now a great time for you, dear bank, to give me a better interest rate. Our experience with my clients, my students, is that they've achieved great success in doing so. And on average, they've achieved about a 0.25 percentage point in reduction in interest rate simply by asking in the right way. Because after you've paid the bond for 6 months, you are now a less risky customer for the bank. And the bank understand that, but they are not going to call you to offer you a better interest rate unless you ask for it. And to an extent, you, in inverted commas, fight for it. So that's a much better use of 15 minutes of your time today, tomorrow, or the day thereafter, rather than maybe watching the YouTube live announcement of Reserve Bank Governor Kganyago.
How important is mood and sentiment to property prices? And where I'm going with this is, there was, I think, in the middle classes, perhaps a sense of optimism when it was confirmed that the ANC was going into a coalition government with other parties. And I think that was kind of short-lived, but if the sentiment after the big speech by the president tomorrow night, etc., sort of turns positive, what does that do to property prices? I mean, that, and maybe a cut in interest rates would obviously play a role in that.
Again, I don't want to be the party pooper, but I think that can be grossly overstated in terms of any short-term change in mood. The fundamentals of the property market, as driven by long-term economic growth, by mass urbanization and densification, by increasing in population, by the increasing building costs. Those are three fundamentals, supply and demand balances, that drive the property market well beyond, short-term drivers like interest rates or optimism around a government or another government. And I think that the focus by all aspiring and growing property investors in South Africa should be solely dedicated to buying the right property at the right price in the right area, and then basically staying the course beyond the short-term fluctuations.
Over time, I mean, over the next 50 years, the world is changing. You still see property as a good bet?
We are terrible forecasters, and I think the last 6 months have proven way too many economists wrong. So I think we have to be careful about not confusing wishes against forecast. But I think, it was the great American author Mark Twain that says that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So it will certainly be different. The opportunities will be different, but there's no doubt that the property market will remain a key driver of wealth creation for many people across the world, including South Africa. And I was quite surprised by a piece of data recently published by BankServe that the average private pension in South Africa is 10,600 rand. And I think without offending anybody, trying to live on 10,600 rand nowadays, it's really hard work. And property still presents itself with a fantastic opportunity, with the right knowledge, with the right tools, with the right action, to make sure that your private pension is a lot better than 10,600 rand, even when you decide to retire.
Carlo Mariani, thank you. Property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. Really do appreciate the time. My thanks also to Mervyn Abrahams, Programme Coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, and starting us off today, and Dumiso Kubeka, Chief Economist at KH Equity Partners. Well, thanks for being with us today. We'll be back with you tomorrow from Mpo, Zelma, Mdu, Stanza, Melissa as well. We'll see you tomorrow with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning, it's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, MK Party accuses SABC of misleading the public over GNU term, and Higher Education Minister focusing on fixing student funding problems. Good morning. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party says the SABC's continuous use of the